Gentlemen, my name is Stephen Buffalo. I'm from the Samson Cree Nation in Treaty 6. And seeing that we're online tonight, I want to acknowledge the Treaty 8, the Treaty 6, and Treaty 7 territories, the traditional places of the Cree, the Saulteaux, the Blackfoot, the Dene, the Nakota Sioux, and as well as the Métis people in Alberta. Tonight, for our people here, and the people who came before us, and the people who come after us, and the people that are online with joining us. Let's have a great discussion about our great province. I'd like to introduce our moderator and MC, Bruce McAllister.
Terrific. Stephen, thanks for getting us started, and good evening and welcome to Alberta Next, our virtual Alberta Next this evening. So good to have you with us. My name is Bruce McAllister, and I'm happy to be your moderator this evening. Looking forward to a great discussion tonight. The Premier is here, and we're looking forward to hearing from the Premier tonight, of course. And we have assembled an amazing panel. If you've followed us from the beginning, you know they're a great group of people. And just like you, they care deeply about this province. And I'll introduce them shortly, and you will hear from them throughout the evening as they provide some perspective and context on some of your comments and questions, which is the reason we're doing this tonight, to be able to hear from you and those of you that couldn't make it to a panel in person. As Stephen said, we've been to 10 cities, so if you missed it, we're glad you could join us virtually. So thank you for joining us, and here are some of the things you'll need to know technically. You'll be able to put your questions in the Q&A box, which you will see on your screen. I'll read your question if you make that request, or prompt you to unmute your mic so that you can join us in conversation and ask it or make your comment yourself. And sometimes that could take a couple of seconds with technology, so just bear with us and remember to hit unmute when I say your name. Write your name, let us know where you're from, and your question. And again, whether you want it read out or whether you'd like to yourself. And you will have 45 seconds to do so. And of course, there are a few rules as well, some housekeeping rules we want to make you aware of before we get started. Number one, of course, is be respectful. And remember, we don't want to tolerate any swearing or disrespect or things like that. Number two, you'll be able to ask one question this evening, and the reason for that is we expect big numbers here online, so choose your question wisely and what subject it will be. I'll explain again what the subjects are momentarily, and you'll be able to pick which one you want to speak to. And third, and probably most important, questions need to be on topic. So if you have a question about another issue, it's probably of great importance to you, just know that we're sticking to the topics that we have prepared tonight about Alberta's relationship with Ottawa and things that we want to discuss and hear from you on. So we'll keep it to that. The evening will be separated into 7 sections, which I'll get to in a bit. So keep your feedback to those sections. And more technical rules to cover here, or guidance, I guess you could say. If you spam the Q&A box, I'm told what's happened, or any of those things, you might be removed from the call, and the technical people will be watching that. And again, I'm sure this doesn't apply to the great majority of you, but somebody might, so that's what will happen. So with that, let's introduce our panel members. And I'm not sure if we're going to cut away individually, guys, so I'll ask you to give a wave. And first of all, our Premier is here once again, and of course that is Danielle Smith. Looking forward to hearing from the Premier tonight. And we have Tara Sawyer, the MLA from Olds Didsbury Three Hills. Dr. Benny Zhu, our registered acupuncturist, 30 years of experience in that field. We're happy to have Dr. Benny. Stephen Buffalo, my good friend, my former teammate and president and CEO of the Indian Resource Council of Canada. The Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, Rebecca Schultz, is with us tonight. Dr. Trevor Toome from the University of Calgary, an economics professor and fiscal policy expert. The Honourable Bruce MacDonald is back this evening. Good to see the judge with us. Dr. Aiken Osakwati, a family and ER doctor in Didsbury. MLA Glenn Van Dyken, a long-serving MLA, a strong advocate for rural Alberta. Samita Anand, the chair of the Premier's Council on Multiculturalism. Andrew Judson from the Fraser Institute. Grant Fagerheim, president and CEO of Whitecap Resources. So that is the panel we have with us tonight. And again, looking forward to tremendous discussion. But before we get started and we cover a few more ground rules, I think first would be appropriate to hear from the Premier, I guess, to set the stage, to say good evening and let us know what we hope to accomplish. Premier.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. I'm happy to be joined online with my fellow Alberta Next panelists. The other night in Calgary, of course, we held the final in-person panel hearing. It was what turned out to be our 10th stop, and our panel went around the province to Red Deer, Lloydminster, Fort McMurray, Grand Prairie, Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, and then back up to the Calgary-Edmonton corridor. We had an incredible turnout everywhere we went, people coming to the mics with passionate ideas and eager to share their thoughts with us. We also noticed, though, that there were tens of thousands of people who were watching online. And so that's how we knew we should end off with an online access so that we could hear directly from you as well. We had lively discussions, of course, on everything from equalization and constitutional rights to federal overreach, immigration, protecting the energy industry, and safeguarding our prosperity. And our survey has also had tens of thousands of respondents across all topics, and our videos have collectively racked up over 100,000 views. Our in-person town halls have had more than 5,000 participants, where attendees directly engaged with their panelists and asked us questions and participated in some straw polling. Not sure if we're going to be able to do any straw polling on this. Oh, I figured Bruce would have that figured out. But that's exactly what we're looking for. We want direct grassroots feedback from the people of Alberta on the biggest issues that our province is facing. And we know there are lots of reasons why individuals were not able to come out in person, but we wanted to ensure that every discussion is available to every Albertan, wherever you live and whatever your situations, which is why we're hosting our telephone town hall tonight. So this is your chance to help shape Alberta's future. And just like the in-person sessions, what we're looking for is your honest feedback at this critical time for our province. I can tell you there has been some candid disagreement on some of the discussions that we've had, and That's part of what we're looking for too. We heard from Albertans that they want to see us have, or that they want to have some say in some of the most important parts of our society, and to ensure that our pension is providing the best benefits at the lowest cost, regardless of whether that provider is the CPP or a provincial plan. We heard that Albertans should champion changes to the Constitution that will allow for a stronger province within a united Canada, and various other amendments. They want a strong police force that will answer when you call 911 and a say in the level of immigration in our province. But the job of this panel, and me in particular, is to listen to the people, and that's why I formed this panel and have chaired it. The panelists, who come from all backgrounds and walks of life, deserve the thanks of all Albertans. They've done a tremendous job and put in a lot of hours traveling. We want to engage with people regardless of their views and capture the widest reflection of public sentiment that we can. And I'd encourage you to go and look at the last time that we had a government do this type of process. It was the Fair Deal panel, and they came back with 25 recommendations after hearing from Albertans, and much of that has guided our work over the past 5 years. For instance, we had the equalization referendum. That's an idea that came out of the panel. Well, the panel wanted us to reduce internal trade barriers, and we have done that across the country. They wanted us to create economic corridors, and again, we have signed many economics corridors agreements with Yukon, Saskatchewan, and Ontario most recently. They wanted us to challenge federal legislation on our areas of jurisdiction, and we have. We've got 15 lawsuits going and more. They wanted us to establish a chief firearms officer, which we did. Create a presence in Ottawa, which we have. We now have an office in Ottawa with representation there. Diversify our energy sector. We've done that in spades. And also relentlessly pursue more market access. I made an announcement about that today, and there's more to come. And also referenda and citizen-initiated referenda. Those are all ideas that came out of the last panel. So it is just an example of the kind of things that can come out of this process. Just some background as well. For 10 years, Ottawa, as you know, took direct aim at Alberta's core industry, from C-69 to the tanker ban, the oil and gas emissions cap, which really acts as a production cap, and the net zero mandates on electricity and vehicles and several other things. In just the last 10 years alone, the result has been more than $500 billion in global investment capital destined for our resource sector has disappeared. It's cost us hundreds of thousands of jobs, hundreds of billions in GDP, and resource royalties for healthcare and education and public infrastructure. If Canada is to be a strong and unified country, it must include a strong and sovereign Alberta within a united Canada that is able to pursue our potential without being held back by our own country and our own federal government. Our negotiating team has had some very positive discussions with the federal government so far, but we do need to see action, and we need to see it soon. But no matter what each of us believes about the big issues or what path that we think is best, we do need to be able to discuss these issues respectfully in forums like this with our friends, with our family members, with our neighbors, even with strangers. And if we do that, I know that in the end our province is going to find the best possible solutions for the challenges we face, and will come out stronger and freer than ever. Because I will always put my faith in Albertans to find the right path. I do trust you, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts tonight. Back over to you, Bruce.
Terrific, Premier. Thank you for getting us started. And already we've had a whole bunch of questions come in, and I should have clarified off the beginning. We'll take your questions as soon as the first video rolls, again, so that we can make sure they're on topic. The questions should be about the first video. That will be our first subject. Then you'll see another video, and so on. So we have 6 or 7 videos tonight, and here is what they are on subjects, so you can keep your question to the one you want to speak to. We'll talk about equalization and transfers. That will be the first video we'll play shortly. A proposed Alberta pension plan. We'd love your feedback on that. Provincial police force. Constitutional changes on immigration reform. We've been getting some great feedback from Albertans on that subject. And provincial tax collection. So we'll play the video, and then after the video plays, you can put up your question in the chat box. We'll allow 15 minutes for discussion on each topic, and I'll get to as many of you as possible while getting some contacts from a panelist who, of course, we want to make sure you hear from as well. Our team will be monitoring the chat as well. You'll be prompted to unmute yourself or your device, and your device when it's your turn to speak. So I'll let you know about that. Remember, you have to click unmute for us to be able to hear you. If you've ever been in a Zoom or Teams meeting like we always forget at some point. So I'm sure I'll have to remind somebody, maybe myself. But if your question has already been answered, I should let you know as well. We'll probably move to another one to get to as much variety as I can. And I will read aloud some if that's what you'd prefer. If you want to put your comment in, just make that note. And again, this is not the time for local issues or other issues. They are very important. We certainly acknowledge that. But we're here to talk about Alberta's future with Ottawa as a province and the challenges that we face. And that's why we're talking about Alberta Next tonight. So with that, let us get ready to watch the first video. And remember, you can input your question as soon as that video plays. The first video we'll watch tonight and then discuss is on equalization and transfers.
Our next topic is reforming federal equalization and transfers. Since 2005, Alberta taxpayers have contributed, on average, $23 billion more per year to the federal government in federal taxes than they received back in projects, benefits, and other spending from Ottawa. That's a net loss to Albertans of nearly $500 billion in just 20 years. Most of those redistributed Alberta tax dollars are spent by Ottawa and Quebec and other liberal-leaning provinces across the country. And part of that massive fiscal transfer out of Alberta comes through the Federal Equalization Program, which has seen Alberta pay over $67 billion into the program since 1957, while receiving back not a single penny since 1965. In 2021, Albertans voted in a referendum to remove equalization from the Constitution, but Ottawa completely ignored us. So what next? Alberta can't stop these federal transfers on its own. The Alberta government doesn't write a check to Ottawa each year, and we can't ask Albertans to stop paying their federal taxes. The fact is, fixing this problem will require political support from other provinces. One option that would be appealing to most other provinces is to have the provinces collect a larger share of overall taxes. This is how it could work. Currently, Ottawa collects over 60% of all the federal and provincial taxes that Canadians pay. The Ottawa bureaucracy takes its portion, with the remainder inefficiently and unequally distributed to the provinces. The dollars we do get back have a lot of strings attached, forcing us to run our provincial programs and build infrastructure the way Ottawa wants us to. No provinces want that, especially the big ones like Quebec, Ontario, BC, and Alberta. What if we cut out the middleman and instead had provincial governments that are responsible for delivering health, education, and social services collect around 60% of all taxes, with Ottawa receiving the rest? Ottawa, in turn, would be able to end most transfer programs to the provinces, along with all the strings, bureaucracy, and waste attached to them. Quebec has already proposed having the federal government let provinces keep GST revenue generated in their provinces in return for ending the federal health transfer. Seems like a great idea. Why not apply that same logic to all federal transfers? Less money collected and wasted in Ottawa. Less federal transfers with only a modest amount of equalization for the smallest provinces and territories that actually need it. And more funds for provincial health, education, and other programs, without strings attached by Ottawa's politicians and bureaucrats. That seems like something most provinces could rally behind. So what say you, Alberta? Should Alberta take a lead role in working with the other provinces to reform federal transfers and equalization by having the provinces collect a larger share of overall taxes, with Ottawa collecting less? And are there any other strategies Alberta should be looking at to alleviate the massive federal fiscal drain to Alberta? For more information, visit alberta.ca/next.
All right. Well, there is the first video. So what we will do again is we'll go to the chat and we'll try and bring you up to discuss this with us, to make a comment or ask a question. And I will ask you as well, when you input your question or comment, it would be helpful to tell us where you're from. So if you haven't done that, just when I call on you, let us know where you're calling in from. And I think the first one we're going to have to read while we get this sorted. So the first question is, if we move ahead with these moves, how long would it take to complete? Great question. I don't know if that's putting the cart before the horse, but it's a great question. How long would something like this take to change?
I would say it's taken already a few years because we prompted. It started with us doing an equalization referendum, which we got 62% of Albertan support on to end equalization altogether. But I can tell you, even though we didn't get the outcome that we wanted from that, with all of the other provinces taking it seriously, we did hear from Newfoundland and Labrador that they made the same point that we have, that it's just simply not fair for smaller provinces to transfer additional dollars to the federal government so they can spend them in the larger provinces. Newfoundland and Labrador is one of the smallest and most indebted provinces. They're a net payer in Confederation. And yet Ontario and Quebec, which should be the biggest and most powerful economies, are net recipients. So they launched a legal challenge. Saskatchewan and British Columbia have joined. And what is the overwhelming ask now is we need to get equal per capita transfers to all of the provinces. We think that at least the big, powerful economies should get the same, and the smaller ones should perhaps get a much modified equalization program. But I would say it's going to take some time, but at least we have more voices that are talking about how we do this. Practically speaking, they renewed the program for another 5 years. It's been the same essential structure since 2007. Professor Toom might tell us when the next one comes up for either renewal or modification, but this has been a pretty long time to have the equalization program operating it as is. It's time for it to be modified.
I'm going to say, Professor Toom, and the reason why, Trevor, is I just want to make sure things are working technically. So I'm going to try to get to a call. And I think it's Orlena that I see who's first. Just give me a nod. Is that right? So Orlena, if you are there, unmute and say hello and go ahead and get into your comments or question. Can you hear us okay?
I'm going to say, Professor Tim, can you get rid of that, please?
Can you get rid of that, please?
Just try to get to a call. And I think it's Orlena that I see who's first. Just give me a nod. Is that right? So Orlena, if you're there, unmute and say hello. And
hello?
Your comments or questions.
Yeah, guys, we've got a delay, guys. So if you're watching at home, apologies. The things you learn technically when you go live with things. So I just want to go ahead and communicate to the control room for a second. Guys, what's happening is we're getting a bit of a delay in the coverage. So I don't know how many seconds we're behind. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to the panelists about this for a second while we try to straighten this out, okay? Trevor, we'll go to you. The Premier was just asking equalization and transfers. For those people at home that haven't been at one of these live, you have provided some great perspective on this. So I'll throw it over to you while we try to sort this out.
Great, thanks, Bruce. And I think on this topic, it's certainly an important one for Alberta, but I think we should remember it's important for all provinces in a country as diverse as Canada. You know, economies are very different from one part of the country to another. Some provinces do require assistance to deliver comparable levels of public services. And so federal transfers do play an important role, but because the country is so diverse, it's really hard for all regions to feel as though they're benefiting equally from whatever arrangement you have in mind. But historically, the federal government has been fairly responsive to concerns raised by different regions and amends and adjusts transfer programs as needed. But currently we're in a situation where we've seen equalization largely unchanged since the current formula was enacted back in 2007. So we haven't had a serious hard look at this program in quite some time. And the devil's in the details with a program like equalization. How you design it matters, because you want to, or I think the goal of the program is to support provinces that need it. But the way we currently have designed it it makes it possible for some provinces to make it look as though they're a little bit poorer than they might actually be. So Quebec, for example, resource revenues are important for that province, hydroelectricity revenues in particular. But if they charge less for power, as they do with the lowest power prices in the country, that artificially lowers what their resource revenues are. And I estimate that if they just raised their power prices by about 2 cents a kilowatt hour, they'd still be the lowest in the country. But that would cause their revenue to rise so much that their equalization payment would fall by about $4.2 billion a year. Or if they just match British Columbia's power prices, 3 cents higher than what Quebec currently is, their equalization payment would fall by $6.1 billion. So there are some pretty significant changes to how we can measure resource revenues, for example, that might address that disincentive. And then more broadly, it's possible that recipient provinces might enact higher taxes, not develop certain resources, or do other things that shrink the size of their tax bases and the strength of their economies. And so I think it's due for a hard look to redesign the program in a way that reflects the the current moment and the pressures that we face, with demographic pressures in particular for some provinces. And it's not just an Alberta-specific issue. It concerns the whole country.
That context. And while you were doing that, I was half listening, Trevor, and I was also trying to sort this technically over here. It may be that we have a longer conversation about some of these things as we do, but I think what might have happened, Orlene, I know you're gone off the phone lines, is you had us on in the background, and so that's what was giving us the delay and the feedback. So I've got to remind you at home, if you have the panel on and you're listening, it's going to be a bit tricky, but I need you to turn that off so that I can call on you and we don't hear that when we talk to you. So Melanie, you're going to be the next one to figure this out for me, for us. So if you are there, Melanie, what I need you to do is make sure you click us off and then click on mute and see if you can talk to us. Okay, let's try it. Melanie, are you there? Melanie is not there. Hello.
Hi, I'm here.
Okay. Hi, Melanie. Thank you for your patience as we try to iron out some of these technical difficulties. What is your comment or question tonight?
Does this not seem a bit biased against the federal government? The Alberta government collects from municipalities in the same way and could therefore be described with that same overreach.
Okay. Well, we had that question last night, Melanie, as well. So, Premier, you handled it last night. I bet you would like to again.
I would say it's the opposite. I guess what we're asking is, in the case of tax collection, when it comes about, should we collect our taxes as opposed to relying on Ottawa to collect it for us? In fact, the municipalities collect taxes and then they remit to us to show that they collect on our behalf. And I have posed to the municipalities if they would like us to become the central tax collector. And I can tell you it was a resounding no. Mm-hmm. And I think for the reason for that is they like to have the control over their own tax collection. They like to be clear about what gets sent to Alberta for Alberta provincial purposes. And so that is one of this is related to one of the topics we'll talk later about, but I would say that is part of the reason why we're having this discussion, is it's not the relationship we have with our municipalities, and maybe we need to have a different relationship with Ottawa.
Excellent. Thank you, Premier. And we'll go back to the lines. Again, if you're just joining us, we're virtual with Alberta Next this evening. You can go ahead and put your question in the chat. Put your name and where you're from so that we know a little bit about you, obviously, when we come to you, and we'll try to address your comments. So I think we have Chandra next, or Chandra from Medicine Hat. So we'll need you to unmute and make sure that we're not on in the background. And as we come to you, hopefully we can hear you okay and you can get started. Can you hear us okay?
Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Awesome. This is going to be the first time in my life I've ever been able to nutshell anything, and my dad's going to be proud. So to sum it all up, how can we literally talk about stopping and like ending these federal transfers if we've got provincial policies that are so far off from federal policies, talking like specifically one policy being 28 years outdated, which is actually something that would help like low-income families that, receive child support and have to, seek assistance. And I'm sure, Ms. Smith, you kind of might have a little bit of an idea of this, because I did kind of try and get this. I've been seeking this information and this question for almost 10 years now.
Okay, a lot
I'm not
there.
sure I know what policy she's referring to that's 28 years out of date.
Chandra, are you still with us? Okay, well, we're gonna have to guess. She hung up, so it's tough. But you are from Medicine Hat, and so you've got. Oh,
I am still here.
Okay, good.
I didn't hang up. The panel or whatever shut me off. No, the policy that I'm talking about is the Family Divorce Act, and it's speaking about the child support being. It is no longer a tax payable item. It is a tax neutral item. So this is something that is actually something that would benefit low-income families if they had to go on welfare or income support. This is something.
Okay.
I think I get her now.
Yeah,
I think Bruce McDonald will be able to respond to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Bruce.
Sorry. Under the Constitution, the Divorce Act is a matter of federal responsibility, and the province has no say in it whatsoever. So the complaint you have is with Ottawa.
Okay, Bruce, thank you. I think the next one is to read, so I will go ahead, and sometimes when you send in your comment or question, the specification is, could you read it for me? So here it is. Has there been some initial contact with other provinces? And is there some interest in going ahead to make these changes? I know you touched on it a bit, Premier, but go ahead.
I can tell you that the ones who are feeling the most frustrated about the program are the ones who are the net payers into Confederation. And I think some of the issues that Trevor Tombe has raised about the unfairness of the program, that it incentivizes those jurisdictions that get their principal amount of revenue from electricity to underprice their electricity, reduce the amount of revenues they would receive, and then we offset it with transfers. It also incentivizes those jurisdictions not to develop their other natural resources. If Michael Binion was here, I don't see him tonight, but if Michael Binion was here, who has tried to do some natural gas development in Quebec, he would tell you that one former Quebec premier had mentioned that there's no point in developing natural gas because it would generate new revenues and it would reduce equalization, and there was no point in doing that until after they'd separated. So that's the kind of gaming of the system that is currently taking place, which is a pretty clear indication that it's not working. So I think that what we're seeing is now other premiers are speaking up about it. Us, Newfoundland and Labrador, Saskatchewan, British Columbia, we have to get a few more in order to be able to make some real changes. Trevor Tombe tells me that the next time it's scheduled to come up for renewal is 2029. So that's we just have to make sure it doesn't get renewed in the format that it's in right now.
Okay, listen, we've got a couple of people on the line. We're not going to go to Annette next, Annette, but I want you to be ready because you're two away. So we'll go to Megan first, and then we'll come to you. So Megan Thompson from Lethbridge is on the line with a virtual town hall with Alberta Next. Hello, Megan. Go ahead. I can hear you barely, and I don't know if that's on our end or your end. You're unmuted, Megan, obviously. And are you close to your mic?
Yeah.
Try again, Megan.
How about now?
Sounds like you're getting closer. Try one more time.
Shoot. How about now?
Yep, go for it, Megan. We'll do our best. Go ahead.
Okay. Where Alberta already voted to end equalization, and it was ignored already, how would having the other provinces involved actually help? Like, even if every province agreed, could the federal government not still ignore us?
Darn, did anybody...
Well, I don't think it was ignored. It's just it wasn't acted on in the way that we expected. And I think it was worth a try. It was worth a try for us to vote on it and initiate the process, hoping that other jurisdictions would be compelled to pass a similar motion. It didn't turn out that way. But it did prompt 3 other provinces to launch a legal challenge. It's very much in alignment with what we're saying, that it's simply not fair. And that's sometimes how change happens, is somebody's got to get the conversation going. The conversation is going. But what we're really seeking now is an alignment of federal transfers with our areas of jurisdiction. Provincial government services are very expensive. They're responsible for about 70% of all tax dollars that are generated, yet we only generate 40%. The rest goes to Ottawa, and then they transfer the rest back to us in dribs and drabs, or too small to be able to cover the actual cost of the program, and then siphon the rest off and spend in areas that is often politically motivated. So trying to get a conversation going to align our taxation power with our areas of jurisdiction is, I think, going to be very compelling to every province.
All right, let's go back to the lines and see if we can get a couple more people through. Catherine, will be to you in a minute, but first I want to go to Annette Park. And Annette, I didn't catch where you were from, so we'll go ahead and ask you to unmute yourself and join us on the Alberta Next virtual town hall with your comments. Hello, Annette. Okay. Annette.
Sorry, can you hear me?
We can now, Annette. Go ahead.
Okay. My apologies. I'm pretty sure everybody's read his book when it comes to values. So how can we possibly trust a man in our federal government when he's made it very clear he's going to do everything he can to get in our way when it comes to our fossil fuels, everything that's like really important to Albertans? And thank you, Daniel Smith, for so many different things, including really standing up when it comes to the teachers union, making it clear so there wasn't miscommunication. It's really important, considering what gets, shared on media, that those things don't get misconstrued. So thank you for that.
Annette, thank you. Premier, I'd obviously like you to answer that because you've been meeting with the Prime Minister, the new Prime Minister, a couple of times. And then... I
think you should go to Schultz.
Well, okay, that's Minister Schultz.
I saw her throwing it over my way, and I have to say, I mean, I've had the pleasure or the challenge, as I've told the Premier, of previously working with Stephen Guilbeault, and obviously their goal over the last 10 years has really been to shut in and shut down production. We see Bill C-48, Bill C-69, we have the tanker ban, the No More Pipelines ban, we've got the oil and gas emissions cap, which is, I call it the production and prosperity cap. We also have the net zero power grid regulations that are still on the table, and that would cost Canadians $1.7 trillion. And they expect us to essentially rejig the entire electrical grid in 10 years, and obviously that took decades to build. Same thing with the oil and gas emissions cap. We are talking a huge impact to the Canadian economy and close to 100,000 jobs, and that's not just here in Alberta. And so I sure am grateful that we do have the Premier taking them to task. You know, while we've heard a change in tone, I would say, from the Prime Minister saying, you know, they can say the word energy now, which is a shift from the last 10 years, but we still have these pieces of unconstitutional legislation. I mean, Minister Guilbeault previously told me that the Supreme Court's ruling on Bill C-69, calling it unconstitutional, was an opinion of the highest court in our country. And so that is what we're up against. It's why I think this panel is so important. And I often say on this panel, it's pretty rare that we have a leader like Premier Smith who's taking the time, who believes in direct democracy, who's traveled the province to hear face-to-face from Albertans about their ideas, their challenges, their concerns, their aspirations for the future, and then bring other provinces on side to tackle some of these issues. Because it's not just, for example, Alberta, who is opposed to Bill C-69. We had consensus across the country on that. And so she's really doing the heavy work to bring other provinces on side where possible to really push for change.
Thank you, Minister. And Premier, you could have added about the meetings, but you're keeping it from us on this one. So maybe is there anything to look forward to? I mean, do you have a different tone from Ottawa than you did 6 months ago?
Well, we'll find out. You may have seen that we announced that to get the ball rolling on a new pipeline to the BC coast, that we're going to be the proponent and have a technical advisory committee of 3 of the major pipeline companies, South Bow, Trans Mountain, as well as Enbridge. Between them, they've got 550 years of experience, the people who are on our panel, in addition to Indigenous leadership in both Alberta and British Columbia. And we're going to get started. And so I guess the question will be, this is the yes or no time, that either we will get it on the major projects list, and that will necessitate changing all of these bad laws, or they'll say no, and then we'll get our answer that way. We're really pushing it so that we can know one way or the other, whether whether the Prime Minister is a pragmatist, as he has been for much of his career as a banker, or whether the sentiments that he was expressing in values, where his attitude seemed to be more about keeping oil and gas stranded and in the ground, was the right one. We won't know until we get an answer, yes or no.
I would like to ask the President and CEO of Whitecap Resources, who would have a lot of experience in dealing with Ottawa and dealing with the province. I don't set you up here to be skeptical, but what's your impression? You know, the last 6 months, and will we be able to move forward?
Yeah. First of all, I want to say we are very blessed to have our Premier. Premier Smith working on our behalf, along with Minister Schultz. And I would tell you, this strong sovereign nation with the United Canada has to play out. They've been doing everything they can for an extended period of time. Alberta has made outsized and disproportionate financial contributions to the Canadian economy and other provinces. Alberta is blessed with the 4th largest oil resource in the world, 2.4 times the resource in place in the United States of America, but produce 1/3 the volume because we've been restricted at 5.3 million barrels a day. So we have the brain power, we have the people, we have the processes to develop our resources. And when we think about it, that's from an oil perspective. Natural gas as well. We produce 12 to 13 BCF a day of Canada's 19 BCF a day. So we over-contribute our resources. And we talk about low emissions. Canada is very well known around the world to be a low emission producer, and we have to celebrate, not what we'll call demonize our sector, we believe, as we advance forward. Our prosperity is currently at risk unless we change the regulations. And that is where we're blessed to have Premier Smith fighting the fight on our behalf to support the initiative to create real jobs, real growth. And when we look at that from an overall perspective, we think if we could unleash the beast, I call it, to unleash our resources to world markets on behalf of Albertans, first of all, and all Canadians, and focus on healthcare, education, social programs, and our way of life in this country. And I think it can change. But we do need to continue to focus on the putting pressure on the federal government and working with them, not against them, if we possibly can. Alberta first, but on behalf of everyone in Canada.
All right. Grant, lots there. Thank you. Really appreciate your expertise on this panel as we've gone along. So here's a straw poll, all right? So we're going to try and see if we can do this virtually, which means at home, you have to help us. You have to vote. And there should be a yes or no option for you. So, and then we'll tally it up. So should Alberta take a lead role in working with the other provinces to reform federal transfers and equalization? And from what I'm seeing, it is a massive majority who say yes. So thank you for answering. Thank you for contributing. We're getting this all figured out just in time to roll the next video, and then we'll have the next discussion. So here comes the video, and you can insert a question on this subject as you're watching the video. It is on the Alberta pension plan.
Our next topic is creating an Alberta pension plan with the same or better benefits than the Canada pension plan. With a younger and more productive workforce, Alberta workers contribute about $3 billion more each year to the Canada pension plan than Alberta seniors receive in benefits. Alberta has the constitutional right to exit the CPP. And if we did, federal legislation says that Alberta would be entitled to a sizable share of the CPP assets that we could use to start our own provincial pension plan, so long as we guarantee comparable pension benefits for seniors. Quebec made the decision to start its own pension plan decades ago, and they have an agreement with Ottawa so that all retirees receive their full pension benefits, whether they worked in Quebec, retired there, or some mix of both. Alberta could negotiate a similar arrangement with Ottawa if we created our own pension plan. There are more factors to consider as well. Currently, virtually all investment decisions and management of the CPP is conducted by folks working in Ottawa and Toronto rather than Alberta. While the CPP's mandate is to maximize pension returns, in recent years, the CPP annual reports have shown an increasing focus on emissions reductions and DEI concerns, which do not always result in the highest rate of returns for the pension plan. CPP management has also become bloated and expensive. 20 years ago, the CPP had only 150 employees, with operating costs of $118 million. Today, it has ballooned to more than 2,100 employees, with operating costs of about $6 billion. If Alberta opted to commence its own pension plan, the fund would be managed out of Alberta by Albertans, and investments could be focused exclusively on maximizing returns rather than adjusting for carbon dioxide and DEI-related objectives. With that all said, the CPP has consistently generated healthy returns and is a stable and critical source of income for seniors in Alberta and Canada. So, what are the benefits of Alberta choosing to withdraw from the CPP to create its own pension plan? 1. A big upfront payout. Alberta would get back a significant lump sum by exiting the CPP. The chief actuary in Ottawa has indicated our share would be at least $140 billion. That's plenty to start and build a strong Alberta pension plan from day one. 2. Better benefits for seniors, lower premiums for Alberta workers. Thanks to our younger, more productive population, an Alberta pension plan could result in Alberta workers paying lower pension premiums on their paychecks, or seniors enjoying higher pension benefits, or a mix of both. 3. Local control and boosting our economy. An Alberta pension plan would be managed right here at home, creating more jobs and growing Alberta's financial sector. We would also be insulated from the economic and demographic decline in Canada. Our investment decisions could also be steered clear of ideological decision-making and instead remain focused on the long-term rate of return for Alberta pensioners. But there are some risks to consider. 1. Uncertain payout. The CPP exit rules aren't clear in the federal legislation, and Ottawa is notoriously anti-Alberta with its decisions. So the size of the lump sum Alberta is offered could be lower than it should be. This could result in a lengthy court battle with the federal government, and it could lower our ability to increase benefit payments for seniors or lower premiums for workers. 2. Long-term risk. As with any pension plan, if the plan is mismanaged or Alberta's economy and demographics fall behind Canada, premiums would have to rise in the future in order to guarantee our seniors the same benefits they enjoy today under the CPP. Regardless, as with Quebec, Alberta's government would still be able to guarantee that an Alberta pension plan provide the same or better benefits to Alberta seniors as they now enjoy under the CPP. 3. Portability concerns. The Quebec pension plan and CPP have an agreement in place to ensure pensioners get the same single pension, regardless of where they worked or lived in Canada during their career. Alberta would expect a similar arrangement with Ottawa, but it is not guaranteed. So, should Alberta withdraw from the CPP and use Alberta's portion of the CPP to create our own Alberta pension plan? Or should we continue with the CPP as we do now?
We are going to go to Scott in High River in just a second to kick us off on this one. I just want to remind everybody, if you just tuned into our virtual town hall with Alberta Next, we will play a video and then we'll discuss that video. So that's the subject, the topic that we're on, and we'll keep things on topic tonight, of course, best we can, and talking about our relationship with Ottawa. And happy to have the Premier and panelists with us this evening. Thank you again for joining us, Scott. If you're in High River and you're unmuted, you can go ahead.
Hello, Premier and people. My concern is I'm not too sure that I can trust Ottawa, because who knows, he'll tax us to death, probably tax our pensions so we don't hardly have one left anymore. And I prefer to have it in Alberta where I can trust it will be.
Sounds like you're in favor, Scott, of an Alberta pension plan.
I'm fed up with Ottawa and I'm fed up with Mark Carney these days.
Thanks for calling in, Scott, and have a great evening. All right. I'll just read this question because we might have a comment on it. So it says, this one's from Lawrence, and he says, why is the government still talking about leaving the CPP when Albertans have clearly said they don't want to leave the CPP? You referenced Quebec when their population is more than double. So again, this is a question we've had at every town hall. Go ahead.
Well, so the reason why sometimes you have to make decision by referendum as opposed to by public opinion poll, because public opinion polls only poll 500 to 800 people at a time. And in the rooms that we've had that have had 500 to 1,200 people in them, when we do a straw poll, you end up with overwhelming support in favor. So we know that as people find out more, and as people find out maybe that some of the rigor has gone out of the Canada Pension Plan management and how they're managing that fund, that they're more open-minded about our approach. What we have done is, I mean, we have a professional management organization, AIMCO. They manage $190 billion worth of investments. And so they have the expertise and the independence in order to be able to take on the additional $140 billion or so that would come this way. We've also changed AIMCO so that it's returning to being focused on more passive management strategies, as well as more conservative strategies that are focused on returns, as opposed to some of the ideological policies that we've seen in the Canada Pension Plan. I think it was also mentioned that the CPP started off with $150 million in management expenses. It's now $6 billion, and it's got over 2,000 employees to it. So we are overpaying with our premium payers by about $3 billion a year, and half of that, all of that is going to pay half the management costs. So I think that's part of the reason. As people find out a little bit more, they say, maybe we're open-minded about this.
Yeah.
But it's one of the reasons why we think that this may be something that has to go to a province-wide referendum to be able to find out how Albertans feel once and for all.
Yeah, it was a great question. We always get good context from Dr. Toom and from Andrew on this one, and we'll go to them shortly. In fact, Dr. Toom, I think this next question might be for you, but let's go to Paul, who is calling in from Foothills. Paul, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. I've got a note that says it might be for Dr. Toom. Can you hear us okay, Paul?
Yep, I can hear. Can you hear me?
You bet. Loud and clear. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Bruce. Professor Toom, the LifeWorks analysis on what the CPP owes Albertans included a legal analysis. And your 2023 white paper calculating the funds to the CPP, or what the CPP owes Albertans, seems to conflict with legal terms in the CPP Act. So the conflict can't be explained in 45 seconds. So I'll just ask with respect, did you obtain a legal interpretation of the CPP Act prior to developing your mathematical formula?
Yeah, thanks for the call.
Yeah, that's a great question. I won't try and unpack it in 45 seconds. You're right to note there was that discrepancy between how we interpreted the language of the Canada Pension Plan Act in 2023. Now, since then, the Chief Actuary of Canada was asked about what their interpretation of the Act was. They established a panel of experts to evaluate the language, consulted widely to provide some recommendations to the Chief Actuary, and that report was released, I believe, about a year ago now, if I'm not mistaken. And that interpretation is what informed the number in the video here. It aligns pretty closely with the interpretation I put forward, but I would not say that this is the end of the story. There's ongoing debate even between members of this panel. There's people who I respect that don't agree with my interpretation, and ultimately it's not up to individual academics or even the chief actuary. It may be something where either there's a negotiated understanding between the provincial and federal governments, or it might be something that the courts would need to weigh in on as well.
I recall a long bus ride from, I think it was Lloydminster to Edmonton, and I sat behind he and Dr. Toom and Michael Binion. Let me tell you, it was one heck of a discussion. Fascinating. Hey, Andrew Judson, the Fraser Institute's done some good work on this, and this might be a good time to come to you for more perspective on numbers.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Bruce, and good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us. In all the panels that we've enjoyed across the province on this subject, it is clearly an emotional issue. There are voices out there that are opposed to any change to the CPP that would focus on emotion and fear even. We've been told that reject this out of hand, and as soon as we're told that, you can tell that those people have not considered the math behind this. So the study that Bruce is referring to was published on the 14th of July, and you can find it on their website for the Fraser Institute. But basically, the math is straightforward. An Alberta pension would be viable and sustainable and successful. That's just the math. The contributions by Alberta participants would fall, and that would present the opportunity for those participants to then invest the savings in a private parallel program, which would compound the returns and the available savings and retirement benefits through their own personal control. So we think that's straightforward. And I just would also add that, this is a federal government that insinuates regularly to the world that the CPP is a federal asset. They misquote some IMF data that nets our national debt against the CP assets. That's not the case. This is not a federal asset. It's your asset. They're only custodians, and I just urge everyone to bear that in mind.
Thank you, Andrew. Okay, we've got a couple people on the line, and as you pointed out, this one can be emotional, and it's completely understandable, but it's good to discuss. So we've got Gerald on the line. And Gerald, I don't see where you're from, but if you could introduce yourself, let us know where you're from. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Well, it's Mike, so it was close to Gerald, but a few letters different. Mike, if you're there, go ahead. Hi, Mike. Go ahead and unmute yourself and join us. I'm told, Mike, you just need to click unmute, and then you're good to go. So right on the top of your screen. Okay, we'll wait on Mike, and maybe somebody could let him know what he needs to do. Is there another person? Okay, Wade, Wade from Sylvan Lake, you have to rescue us, Wade, because we're having some technical problems and you're going to be the way out. So
I think I'm here.
You're there, Wade. Thank you.
Okay, well, I've got a bunch of questions. First of all, I don't know how anybody can trust Mark Carney and the Liberals, anything they say. And second of all, they've all had 70 plus years to interpret the meaning of that CPP thing, and everybody's just doing it now. How come?
Well, there's a couple of questions there, Wade. Okay. Trevor?
Yeah, great question. And I think the CPP was significantly reformed in the 1990s. And so the interpretation of the language of the Act, I think, was fairly crystal clear for the first 30 years of the program. And indeed, in the public accounts, we apportioned things province by province in terms of the investment returns that are accounted for by each one. But when we reformed the program in the late 1990s, we didn't update the language in the Act to maybe clarify it under the modern version of the system. And it just hasn't been an issue that has risen to higher on the policy agenda until recently. And indeed, early in the 2000s, when the CPP was growing, the assets also weren't that big, and so it wasn't an issue that really mattered as much as it does until now.
Terrific. I just want to remind you at home, too, when we come to you, you have to click unmute and make sure that you've got us off in the background so that, A, we can hear you, and B, that we don't hear any feedback. So the last couple of callers, that was the issue. They didn't hit unmute. So, Sean, you should be next, and you've got a tough question with a sports analogy, if this is the right Sean. Can you hear us, Sean?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, Sean. Yeah, go ahead.
Again, I was just trying to understand, how do we make a decision on the moving away from the CPP without knowing the exact numbers? It's almost impossible. And my question referenced, it's like trying to bet on a CFL game with 3 minutes left. It's impossible.
Yeah. Well, and your point there is the teams could score 5 times each in the last 3 minutes. And so, Premier, you take his point. People are skeptical, but I guess part of your response would be you wouldn't do it unless you knew there was more money.
Well, I guess the question is this. I mean, I think that what we discovered through our consultations is there's a real misunderstanding about how the current Canada Pension Plan works. People think that when they put their premiums in and their employer matches it, it goes into an account with their name on it, just like an RSP. But that's not how it works. It's a pay-as-you-go system. And so what happens is that the people who are working today and paying today are paying the benefits for the seniors who receive today. What happens in Alberta is because we've got so many more people paying than receiving, we pay $9 billion in contributions, and our seniors only receive $6 billion worth of benefits. So there's $3 billion that every year, year after year, are left over. So I guess that's the question. If we don't take over an Alberta pension plan, those $3 billion per year, or whatever it is in the future, are going to keep on accumulating. And so whatever the transfer should be to date, we know for sure that 25 years from now, will essentially be owed another $100 billion. And do we want that to continue? From what I understand from Professor Toom's calculation and the guidance that the federal government gave us, it sounds like their interpretation is likely no less than around $140 billion. So we look at that as the bare minimum, and then we litigate the rest in court. But we don't need to have much more than that for the plan to be viable, because as I just described, it's a pay-as-you-go system. In fact, Professor Toom has said this in previous sessions, that to be able to have a viable plan with the amount that is currently owed, it would need to be about $20 billion for it to have the same viability as the federal plan. So whether it's $20 billion or $140 billion, or what we think it should be, $300 billion, it still allows for us to be able to determine how those dollars are invested today and how future dollars would be invested as well.
That is great clarity, but good question, Sean, for sure. We've heard it at every panel. Let's take one more on this issue. Linda is joining us on the call, on the line. Linda, I can't see where you're from, but I'll ask you to click on mute and go ahead and take your time to make your comment or ask your question. Hi, Linda.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Am I getting feedback or anything? I'm not sure how to turn off my volume on
Linda, it sounds fabulous.
Okay, good.
Go ahead.
I'm in Calgary, and I've heard that even if we don't get any seed money from the federal government, from the CPP, it still would be a viable program. I think Danielle may have spoken to that just now a little bit, but is it a viable program if we get nothing from the CPP?
You bet. She did, Linda, for sure. And you probably had us down so that you could take the call. Either you, Premier, or Professor Toom, how about a quick summary?
Yeah, that's a great question. So right now in the CPP, there is a buffer, and that buffer is naturally there to absorb terrible years of investment returns. And so if Alberta were to separate from the CPP with literally nothing, which is certainly not a realistic scenario, but if it had literally zero, then the contribution rate that would sustain an Alberta pension plan would still be about 0.1 percentage points below the current base CPP contribution rate. So to answer your question, yes, mechanically, it could be sustainable with zero.
Okay. Let's do a straw poll. These are interesting. You know, when we do them live, it's interesting because it's been pretty solid on one side of these issues. We'll see how it goes virtually. Here's the question. Should Alberta create a pension plan? Should we create a pension plan with the same or better benefits than the Canadian pension plan? Yes or no? And there are the results. And they are in favor with a final number of, as I look to my friend Stephen Buffalo, 73-27. All right. Thank you for participating. Okay, so let's go to the next topic. And again, you can enter your question on this topic. It's the one we're going to discuss next, right after the video. Here it is on the proposed provincial police force.
Our next topic is the potential creation of an Alberta police service to take over community policing from the RTMP. Today, roughly 80% of Albertans are served by local municipal police services, such as the Calgary, Edmonton, and Lethbridge City Police Services. However, Albertans living in most rural communities and a few mid-sized cities like Red Deer, Fort McMurray, and Airdrie are policed by the RCMP under Alberta's policing contract with Ottawa. And as is the case with most federal agreements, Alberta is getting shortchanged. To be clear, RCMP police officers and staff aren't the problem. They do all they can to protect us with the resources they have. The problem is Ottawa. Because the federal government is failing to provide the number of promised officers and resources to Alberta communities under the policing contract, response times are slow, staffing is stretched thin, and officers are often moved across the country at a moment's notice, resulting in little connection to the Alberta communities they serve. Furthermore, because of French language requirements, English-speaking Alberta officers do not qualify for senior RCMP positions. And ultimately, the RCMP's policing priorities are chosen by the federal government in Ottawa, rather than the provincial government in Alberta. Even the federal government itself has recently stated the RCMP should transition away from contract policing when current agreements expire in 2032. Ontario and Quebec have had provincial services for over 100 years. Why not Alberta? So, what are the benefits of Alberta withdrawing from the federal policing contract and creating our own provincial police service to provide community policing? 1, more local, more accountable. An Alberta police service would be run by and for Albertans, accountable to our province and not to the federal government in Ottawa. Police officers and support staff could build long-term careers in the Alberta communities they know and love. And any current RCMP officers and support staff working in Alberta would be invited to join a new Alberta police service. 2, safer rural communities. With local recruitment and stable placements, rural response times would improve considerably from where they are now, and coverage would become more reliable and tailored to each municipality and region. This is especially important in underserved rural Alberta communities. 3, flexible, made-in-Alberta solution. Most Albertans already have local police services. The province would assist larger communities like Red Deer, Fort McMurray, and Airdrie to transition to their own police services, while smaller, rural communities would be policed by the new provincial police service. And of course, nothing would change for Edmonton, Calgary, and other communities that already have municipal police services in place. But there are also potential drawbacks to consider. 1. Startup costs. Establishing a new police service requires significant initial investment. Hiring officers, buying equipment, building training infrastructure, and training personnel. Ultimately, the startup costs could reach into the hundreds of millions over several years. 2. Loss of some federal operational funding. The federal government currently covers 30% of RCMP contract policing costs. It is therefore likely that there will be additional ongoing operational costs for the province. However, municipalities would not be saddled with those costs. So, should Alberta create an Alberta Police Service to take over community policing from the RCMP?
We have enjoyed this conversation as well, and hearing from people around the province. And I've made this point at live town halls. I know everybody feels this way on this panel. When we have this discussion, we always say this is not about the great men and women in the RCMP that serve us and put their lives on the line. We're grateful for each and every one of them. We are talking about the bureaucracy and the systems and whether or not we'd be better served in Alberta with a different one. That said, how about a different perspective? I'm going to ask my friend Stephen Buffalo. You get different viewpoints on First Nations on this subject even.
Yes, thanks, Bruce. And of course, here in the province, we see in southern Alberta, the Blood Tribe Kainai Nation, they have their own police service. And as well, visibly here, just west of Calgary, the Tsuut'ina have started their own police service. And as well, you go east to Siksika, and they've started something that's developing in the policing area there. You know, and talking to some of the chiefs, you know, the initiative, they like it. And, you know, for the most part, it's just really how they want to get it going forward. But, you know, proof already that there's already communities with their own policing. I think it can gain momentum for sure.
Yep. No, good to know. And we've got a few people on the lines and a couple others I want to hear from on the panel, but maybe we'll go to Hunter Newbury first. Hunter's in Strathcona County with an opinion or a comment or a question. Hunter, go ahead. You're live with us tonight on the Alberta Next virtual town hall. I hope you're there, Hunter. You just need... Okay.
Hi, hello.
Hi.
I'm doing good.
Good.
So, my question is a strange one.
Okay, well...
The Alberta... Please continue talking. I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, Hunter. Your question's about a police force in RCMP? Go ahead.
Yes. With the potential police force, how would it handle external factors with the use of a canal? That's my question.
Yeah, do you have a specific, Hunter, on external factors? Like what do you mean?
War.
Oh, boy. Okay. Well, lots of things to be worked out, but there is no question that I can't ask somebody on this panel to come up with an answer to. So if I don't see any hands, Premier, that means I look at you.
Well, I would hope that we don't have to have a conversation about war, because that would still be federal jurisdiction, since national defense falls under federal purview. What we are talking about is policing of the civilian population, which is a different consideration. And right now, we have 80% of Albertans who are policed by a municipal service. We also have a sheriff's policing unit that we are setting up. It'll have about 1,200 individuals who are in it. And they're doing all kinds of things, like fugitive apprehension. They have a scan team that shuts down drug houses. They have a surveillance team. They're doing border security for us. We've embedded them in Calgary and Edmonton. We've actually found that our Alberta sheriffs have a lot more flexibility for support and interoperability than we do with the RCMP. We can't actually order the RCMP into any jurisdiction outside the ones that they're in. We don't really have line of sight into how many people are in the detachments. We know we pay for a certain amount, but we don't always have that full complement. And so what it would really be like, if you wanted an indication, is to look at how Quebec operates and how Ontario operates. Both Quebec and Ontario have their own provincial police service. The RCMP could simply become a national police service. So a white paper that was issued when Justin Trudeau was leaving office suggested that they should turn their attention more to cross-border issues like gangs, organized crime, human trafficking, and some of the other higher order types of policing functions that go cross-jurisdiction. So we have to take them seriously when they say that they might want to pull out of community policing, but moving towards more of an Ontario or Quebec model.
Excellent. I always like to hear from our rural MLAs on this. I'm going to go to them in a minute. So Glenn and Tara, you've both been warned, but let's go to Jerry first on the virtual line. Jerry, if you're there, go ahead and hit unmute and go for it. What's your question or comment tonight for the Alberta Next panel? Go ahead, Jerry.
You can hear me clear?
You bet. Yep.
Okay. My question is in the event the federal government decides to order the RCMP to defy your directive not to participate in the gun grab, Daniel Smith directly, please, are you prepared to order the RCMP out of our province under the direct supervision of our provincial polices?
Yeah, Jerry, thank you. And Premier, you should know that I hold in my hand the next question I was going to read was from Susan from Fort Mac with basically the exact same question.
We have already done that. We've already told the RCMP, the sheriffs, and municipal police services that it is not our priority for policing. And my justice minister has also indicated to the Crown Prosecution Service that it is not our priority to prosecute these crimes. And so we are going to do mass non-enforcement of these provisions, and that's not outside what has happened in other jurisdictions. If you recall, when cannabis possession was becoming more and more acceptable, very few police services were enforcing those laws. In British Columbia, they went even further, and they allowed for the possession and sale of all types of illicit drugs, and we're allowed to do that for a period of time. And so one of the powers that I have read a legal paper on that we have is that the federal government, yes, they can pass criminal code, but we have the power over administration of justice and policing. And I would say our government's priorities for policing are going after the guys who are setting up fentanyl labs, the gangsters, people who are involved in organized crime, people committing assault, people committing violent crime. Those are the priorities that we have. And so I guess we'll watch and see whether the RCMP follow our directive, but I can tell you that we will take every step to make sure that the police that operate in our jurisdiction follow the directive of my public safety minister.
Yeah, we've been very clear. Premier, you've been very clear. We are with you on that one. This is one of those topics that really does make a difference whether you're rural or urban, and sort of how you deal with the RCMP. I mean, here in Calgary, obviously, they love their police force. Edmonton, the same. Glenn, to that point, what do you hear, from your constituents about RCMP, about local police forces? Is this a big issue for you?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak to this, Bruce. Over 10 years, I've been MLA for the region I serve, and I've participated in many different town halls alongside RCMP, alongside Rural Crime Watch, Citizens on Patrol. Rural crime is quite a complicated issue to try and solve. But I do believe that what probably concerns me the most about whether or not we consider the Alberta Police is the fact that the federal government has made it clear that contract policing is optional for them going forward after 2032. And I think it's important for rural Alberta to not be underserved at that point in time. And so it would be irresponsible for the provincial government to not consider and look at establishing Alberta Police Service. I believe that rural Alberta police enforcement would be better served with a local police service, and community policing would be strengthened with increased officers on the ground.
Okay, let's go to Andy, who has a good question tonight. If it is the one that I'm reading, let's see if Andy can unmute and share with us the comment or question that they'd like to ask. Andy, are you there? Just need to unmute, Andy, so that you can join us.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, you bet.
Yeah, I just had a quick question about whether the new police force would be integrated with the Calgary Police Service and other police services in the province, or would they be separate or fully integrated, or how would that work?
Yeah, is there a model, Premier, or is it sort of community choice?
I can tell you what we've seen so far is that we were able to hire 50 police officers in Calgary, and actually 25, I think it was, in Calgary and Edmonton sheriffs to be embedded into both Edmonton and Calgary Police Service as extra hands on deck when we were addressing the encampment crisis. But they were directed by the local police chief at that time. So that's the kind of interoperability that I think we would be able to get, where the local police service would be able to call on our sheriffs for extra support. But when you look at where the RCMP currently operate, mostly it's rural jurisdictions, although it is some of the larger ones. Airdrie and Red Deer and Fort McMurray all have RCMP as their detachment. So I would imagine it would be a hybrid. You'd end up with some jurisdictions that would choose to go for a municipal force, like Grand Prairie did. They just recently converted from RCMP to a municipal force. You'd have some who would do a regional force. I understand that down south, the municipalities adjacent to Medicine Hat are contemplating whether Medicine Hat could come into their areas and be a regional police force. And you may also end up with others. There are two jurisdictions that have asked us to set up separate sheriff's detachments where there isn't current RCMP coverage. So we do want to work with municipalities, because what we've seen is that local policing model really works, and that is where you get the local priorities met.
That's it. And I see Stephen Buffalo nodding as you're talking. It's exactly what he's been hearing in some of his communities. Mr. McDonald, a thought on this?
Well, yeah, one thing I think this should be made clear, well, several, I guess, but Alberta previously did have its own Alberta Police Force, and that was from 1917 to 1932. And the reason that came about was because the government in Ottawa at the time decided to unilaterally pull the RCMP out of Alberta as its provincial police force. There was a bit of a history to that. They didn't want to enforce a law that Alberta wanted enforced. So Alberta, on very short notice, was forced to create its own provincial police, and it did a very good job. Unfortunately, come 1932, the province was bankrupt, and the Alberta Provincial Police had to be disbanded, not for operational reasons, because it was a good force, but because the province was simply unable to fund it. A couple more points I want to make. I think this decision really has been made for Alberta anyway. We've heard about the white paper that came out in March of this year. I think we have to take the federal government at its word that it wants to get out of contract policing. They're quite badly understaffed anyway, and they really do need to concentrate on what are really a national issues. We had one fellow at one of the town halls says, "It's kind of a crazy system we have here, because it's like getting a traffic ticket from the FBI if we're in the States." So I think we do need our own provincial police force. And incidentally, all the infrastructure, the buildings and all the rest of it that the RCMP currently utilize are owned by the province. So it's not a case the province would have to build new detachment centers and all the rest of it. The province owns it.
All right. Let's go to Guy Baudouin, who is on the phone and or on the computer or virtual line, I guess. Guy, can you hear us okay? Go ahead and unmute and ask your question or make your comment. All right, Guy, we're going to wait. We're going to go to Zhu Hong instead, who I think I might have jumped the queue there. Zhu Hong, can you hear me okay? Just go for it. Okay, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes. Yep. Go ahead. We can hear you.
Okay. You are talking about what problem is police right now?
Yes.
Okay, I have two questions. One is that the police is for civil service instead of for the crime prevention. The other is about gun control. Do you follow the examples of New Zealand instead of the U.S.?
Oh shoot! Did his line just click off, guys?
Yeah, I think he was wondering why we wouldn't want to go more down the path, like New Zealand with gun control to try to do crime prevention. And I guess, we just have a different view on that. I think that the view that we would have is that people who are having firearms for law-abiding reasons because they inherited them or they need them for pest control on a farm, or they're a sport shooter, or they are a gun collector, they're not the ones who are going out committing crimes. We think that there is legitimate reason to police those who have the criminal use of firearms, who are using their guns to commit crimes, who are smuggling them, who are putting them in the hands of gangs. Though that's where the law enforcement should be. The taking the guns out of the hands of people who are law-abiding, who purchased them legally, who went and got their possession and acquisition license. That's just, I think, trying to address it's the wrong way of trying to address the issue of serious crime. The only way to address serious crime is to go after criminals.
If I might just pipe up here, that one of the countries that has the highest rate of gun ownership in the world is Switzerland, and the reason for that is every male, I think between the ages of 18 up to about 50, is required every year to serve a month in the Swiss military, and most of them have their armaments at home. But we know Switzerland is also one of the most law-abiding and safe countries in the world. So the ownership of guns is not the problem.
Okay, I want to go to another rural MLA. Because one of the things I find fascinating about politics, if you've never done this, is when you door knock, you learn a lot. It's like these panels, we hear from a lot of you. Tara Sawyer is the newest MLA because she ran a by-election in Olds, Didsbury, Three Hills. So Tara, you did a lot of door knocking and you talked about policing. Can you give us some perspective on what you heard?
Yeah, thanks. Being in a rural riding, this is a really, really important issue that a lot of us are definitely concerned about because of what we deal with. I definitely heard it a lot. Actually, I don't think I've mentioned it in any of the other panels. The concern that a lot of the constituents had about their guns being taken from them, and they're law-abiding citizens who use it for hunting to feed their families. Yes, they use it for some sport, and we use them for coyotes and gophers at this point. So I had those questions asked of me, and the questions on what are we doing to protect us a little bit more. I hit a door, and it happened to be the gentleman was a retired RTMP officer, very proud to have served, and he expressed to me his concerns that it is not the same force that it used to be. And he discouraged his son because of that, of joining, and that's concerning to me. And he lives in a small town where he absolutely felt that we were being underserved, and the best thing we could do would be to have our own police service. I hit a door where a gentleman is active with Calgary Police Service, and that's fine. But he said, but he also felt, because he lives in a rural riding in a rural town, he's like, we should have our own police service. There's nothing he would love more than to serve in the community where he's raising his family. And it's been touched on by the Premier and Glenn with respect to the lack of numbers. And so we've got municipalities that are paying for officers, but we're not getting the full complement, and that's a problem too. So we're underserved, and our communities value the relationship that they have not only with each other but with the people in the service. And when they're moving away a lot, they're not building that connection, that level of community that in a rural riding is vital. Towns rely on each other. We rely on each other for everything, and so we would like to have better represented. And I mean, don't even get me started at harvest. How many people are being, like this harvest alone, how many of our neighbors I know have been victims of crime because we're seen as easy pickings. No, Tara, this is why, like, we enjoyed you on the panel for several reasons, but great context on these issues, and boy, rural Albertans can relate, I know that. And speaking of which, I think we have the mayor of the village of Berwyn on the phone or online with us, or maybe it's I read the question. So it's from Nicole Johnson, who is the mayor of Berwyn, and if I have my geography right, Peace River area, I think. Yes, I'm getting a yes. So the question is, will the government commit to reviewing the funding model
and ensuring that the small municipalities receive not just financial support, but actual policing presence. And Premier, that's coming from the Mayor of Berwyn.
Well, I can tell you that my Public Safety and Emergency Services Minister, Mike Ellis, when he talks to mayors and those in smaller jurisdictions about what they're currently paying and versus what they're getting for the RCMP complement, there's a huge mismatch. There's one jurisdiction he told me about recently that pays $1.4 million, and they routinely get told there are 0 officers to be able to respond to calls. So you have to ask the question, what can you normally get for $1.4 million? Well, you'd probably be able to get 12 permanent sheriffs for that kind of money. So why is it that jurisdictions that have RCMP paying that kind of money are told, sorry, we have no one to respond to the call? So that is sadly the experience that people are having in rural Alberta, and it's part of the reason why we've been asking them if they want to have police grants to look at, is there a better way to deliver the service? We're more than happy to support that, but it's part of the reason we're having this consultation.
That's it, and we feel for the men and women that are serving in the areas they're expected to cover, undermanned. Okay, here's the straw poll. Should Alberta create an Alberta Police Service to take over community policing from the RCMP? You can click yes or no. Again, should Alberta create an Alberta Police Service to take over from the RCMP? Looks like the yeas have it. Stephen, you can see better than me. The final numbers that we have are 80-119 or 80-20. So there you have it. Thank you for the participation on that one. Boy, some great feedback tonight. The next video that we'll watch is on constitutional changes. Prepare your questions. Here's the video.
Our next topic is Alberta taking a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution to empower and better protect provincial rights. The Canadian Constitution, including its Charter of Rights of Freedoms and sections on the division of powers between the federal and provincial governments, is foundational to our democracy. The enforcement of the Constitution by governments and the courts ensures our rights and freedoms are protected, and that our provincial and federal governments generally function as they should. But no document is perfect. Some things that made sense 150 years ago may no longer make sense today. That is why the Constitution contains an amending formula that permits the Constitution to be altered should enough provinces and the federal government agree to it. Over the last decades, several outdated and unfair problems with the Constitution have been identified, but no tangible progress has been made to fix them, due primarily to a lack of federal and provincial leadership. Examples of proposed constitutional reforms include the following. 1. Amending the division of powers to indicate that core areas of provincial jurisdiction, including over natural resources and health, are immune from federal legislation, and to also ensure that in shared areas of jurisdiction, such as agriculture and immigration, provincial laws prevail over federal ones. 2. Imposing constitutional limits on the federal spending power in areas of provincial jurisdiction, including a provincial right to opt out of federal spending measures with proper compensation should they so choose. 3. Adhering strictly to representation by population in the House of Commons. Right now, those living in smaller provinces are greatly overrepresented when compared to those living in larger ones. 4. Either abolishing the Senate entirely or having it actually represent provincial interests as originally intended by mandating an elected Senate with the same amount of senators representing each province. 5. Allowing provinces to appoint their own King's Bench and Court of Appeal justices, rather than having those appointments made by the federal government. 6. Expanding the Supreme Court to allow for more justices from Western Canada and making prior service on a province's Court of Appeal a mandatory requirement of becoming a Supreme Court justice. 7. Eliminating the Ottawa residency requirement for judges on federal courts to ensure more Western Canadian representation. And 8. Mandating provincial approval of the appointment of a lieutenant governor to a province by the federal government. There are, of course, many other potential constitutional amendments that are worth discussion, but this is a start. So, should Alberta take a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution in order to empower and better protect provincial rights? And if so, which of the amendments discussed or other proposals should the Alberta government advocate for?
All right, here we go. On the Canadian Constitution, there is so much to add to this one, but I'm going to start by going to the line, and Colleen Younger is who we're going to go to first. Colleen, if you're there, go ahead and unmute. Tell us where you're from and ask your question or make your comment. Are you there, Colleen? It shows you're still muted, Colleen, so you just need to click unmute.
Hello.
There you go. Hi. You're not the first to do that, Colleen. We all do it daily. But anyway, welcome. What can we do for you?
So I live out here, East Central Alberta. We used to have, I'm going to age myself, but 30 years ago, we had a wild fish and game officer, and we saw him around the area on the gravel roads. And I was wondering if there is some kind of thought of replacing those, bringing them back in rural Alberta, just to help out, complement the RCMP.
Okay. Colleen, thanks. Obviously, we moved on to the Canadian Constitution, but does anybody want to?
Sure, I may just say that fish and game officers are now part of our sheriff's unit, and conservation officers are part of forestry and parks. And so we're having a conversation about how to make sure that we do have more of those dedicated officers to be able to protect against poaching. And so if you had noticed that there's a bit of a change, let me take that away, because we want to make sure that we always have more coverage as opposed to less. And if there has been a bit of a hole created, that certainly wouldn't have been the intention. But yes, both conservation and fish and wildlife officers are meant to augment what we have going on out in rural Alberta with our other services.
All right, Colleen, thank you. Let's get to Nathan from Edmonton. Nathan Smith on constitutional changes and that subject. Nathan, go ahead. I think go ahead. Just unmute, Nathan. All right.
Okay.
Yep. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
You bet.
I think I'll just read from my question here so I don't get distracted. Thank you for hosting these panels. I've been watching most of them live, and I would like the conversation, even with some people trying to derail them. There's a few the other night. I would like to see a panel on constitutional changes, and I would love to have Alberta lead the charge, so to speak.
Oh boy.
The problem that I see is that the only way to get approval for constitutional changes is to essentially make an omnibus or large amount of changes across all the provinces, and all the provinces would need to approve of them. It would need a lot of bartering. Is this what you had in mind?
Yeah, that's a great question, Nathan. I don't know what the short answer is, Premier, and I wish Michael Binney was here because he'd touch on it too, but go ahead.
Well, let me tell you the short answer, which is that's why we're asking, is it worth it? Is there an appetite to try to do that exact kind of constitutional convention that you talked about, that we saw back in the 90s, where all the premiers get together with federal counterparts, and we go through line by line, hashing through the things that are not working for us and create a package of reforms that then get put to the people for a referendum, or at least get determined to be passed by the amending formula, which is 7 out of 10 provinces representing 50% of the population in most cases, but some of them require unanimous consent. Do we have the appetite to do that, having seen it fail in the past? I don't know. I think it's probably worth a try, because some of these things will only change that way. That being said, there are lots of ways that we can change the Constitution bilaterally, and I've been reminded by panelists of a few of those things. So Nunavut was created with a constitutional change. It got its own power, and then most recently it got devolution, so it had more power over its resources. Quebec changed so that they could be recognized as a distinct society. That was something they were asking for in previous constitutional amendments, and they got that with a bilateral change. Newfoundland and Labrador changed its schooling system. They used to have both a public and a Catholic school system. They changed their constitution so that they removed that. And I was just told that when the Confederation Bridge was built for Prince Edward Island, the Constitution had to be changed to no longer mandate that ferry service was required. So maybe one from our perspective that might be on the smaller scale, but kind of important to the folks in PEI. So there are ways to amend the Constitution bilaterally. Some of them certainly require multilateral. 2 different ways to do it. Big constitutional convention. The other way to do it is the amending formula.
I will ask Mr. MacDonald in just a minute for some of the legal issues, some of the things that are discussed at these panels. But first, I want to take another call or two, and I think I'll go to Bobby first. Love it when you tell us where you're from. It's a big province. I've got Bobby McKay. Just hit unmute and join us and let us know where you're from and what your comment is. Still muted, Bobby. You just need to...
Yeah.
There you go.
Am I there?
Yep, got you now.
Yeah, thank you for taking my call. I really respect what you're doing here.
Thank you.
Essentially, my question's around payment efficiency and attracting smart money and smart talent to the province. What are we doing to adapt the latest technology to ensure our payment systems stay relevant to the world?
Hey, Bobby, where are you from?
From Edmonton.
Edmonton, okay. Thank you. I only asked just we've got people calling.
It has to do with like all of this, private property rights, self-sovereign identity.
Yep.
Yeah, like it's all related.
Yep. Premier, do you want to tackle that one, and I'll get the justice to win?
It's a little complicated because the currency is one of the powers that was given to the federal level of government. In the past, we had tried to set up our own currency, and the federal government used its power of disallowance to say, you can't do that. You can't be in our area of jurisdiction. We kind of think we should have the power of disallowance too, and tell the federal government that their laws don't apply in our areas of jurisdiction. They certainly have the power to do it the other way. But one of the powers we do have is to have a credit union system. So that's one of the ways that we're creating other options for people when it comes to banking. We have ATB as our crown corporation. We continue to keep our securities regulator, and that allows us to have a financial sandbox so that we can try new and innovative ways of regulating some of the new mechanisms. One of my ministers, Dale Nally, is down at a blockchain conference, and we have a blockchain consortium that comes here every year, and we look at ways to get new some of that investment in Alberta. I think we're leading the way in a lot of respects. So there are certain areas that are outside our purview, but other areas where we think we can show some leadership on.
On the last 10 panels that we've done live, Justice MacDonald, this has come up a little bit on judges and these kinds of things.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bruce, and thank you everybody for tuning in. There are a number of items that were mentioned in the video that I think if Alberta were to lead the charge, which I know we will, there'd be a lot of support amongst the provinces. One of the most important is what we call Section 96 judges. Under the Constitution, the provinces have the responsibility for establishing all the courts in the province, from the Court of Appeal right down to the Alberta Court of Justice. But under the Constitution, it's the federal government that appoints the judges for the Court of Appeal and for the Court of Queen's Bench, which is the Superior Court of civil and criminal jurisdiction. I can see every province in Canada wanting to change that so that the power to appoint those judges is vested in the province. So that's one I think that could really find support right across the board if we were to take the initiative. Another one, and this would require King's Bench, sorry, the unanimity is the power to appoint the lieutenant governor. It's symbolic, but symbols are important.
Yep.
The other one that I think would only require the 7 provinces and 50% of the population is to abolish the Senate. The Senate has become a real boondoggle. And let me just say, from my own personal perspective, I was a big supporter back in the day of the Triple E Senate. And I really hoped it would go somewhere. It hasn't. I'm not sure it would have solved the problems anyway. I think that the Senate is beyond any kind of reform. I think it just needs to be abolished. And I think there'd be widespread support in most of the provinces, or at least enough to get past the 750 requirement to get rid of the Senate. So those are 3 that I think there's a good chance on, and there are probably others. There are others as well, but those are the big 3.
No, very good. Very good. And I'm glad you mentioned the Senate so thoroughly, because we've heard it at every town hall, and people very frustrated that former Prime Minister Trudeau is appointing senators in Alberta, where it probably doesn't line up with what the people of Alberta feel, to put it mildly. Cam Snyder is with us. Cam, I want to go to you next. If you are with us and you can hear, just click on mute and you'll be able to join us. Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, you bet.
Okay, great. Yeah, my question is this is just amending the Constitution is impossible, guys. You know that. Come on, let's talk reality here.
Come on, Cam, you got 30 seconds. You can tell us how difficult this is going to be for 30 more seconds.
Just another thing, too. Someone said about currency payments.
Yeah.
Currency, gold and silver are legal tender along with the U.S. dollar in Florida. Can we do that here? Is there anything preventing us doing that?
You know what? The first half I'm going to throw to Minister Schultz, because I know you guys talk about this all the time in Cabinet, some of the frustrations we have. He raises a good point, Minister. A lot of people are losing faith that we'd be able to do it. I mean, what do you say to this subject?
Well, and I think this is kind of speaks to what the Premier has said, even just on the individual pieces since the beginning of the night. I think that there are things that we actually could probably get agreement from a majority of the provinces and premiers on. And then there are things that we may want to address as one-offs. And I think, there's a few challenges here. One of the things that the Premier often says that I really appreciated, was that we have a federal government that is acting lawlessly. And I think it's, first of all, on one side, we have the federal government ignoring the Constitution as written or not respecting it or acting outside of it in their own ideological interests. That's one issue. The other issue would be, I think, using our tax dollars and then, as we talk about trickling them back down, to then force influence, and again, I would say ideology in some cases, on areas of provincial jurisdiction, like healthcare, like childcare, like dental care, like pharmacare. So we see them collect those dollars, but trickle it back with so many strings that then, in fact, they are stepping on areas of provincial jurisdiction because all of these dollars then have strings attached. And then you have the other piece, which is actually changing the Constitution. And we hear this. It's not just around Section 92 and resource development, although we already touched on that already, that we are responsible for developing resources, developing electricity, and making sure that folks have access to electricity on our grid. We've seen, obviously, federal policy fly in the face of those pieces. But then we do have the bigger issues around Senate reform, representation across the country. And I know, Premier, you have some great stories about conversations with some folks in Atlantic Canada about maybe how little awareness there is, or how much more awareness there is now that this conversation is happening, that we may in fact see provinces across the country also joining our push for change, but also pushing the federal government to respect what's already there. And I like to say, could you just imagine how efficient and effective we would be as a province from both, I would say, a regulatory perspective and a tax dollar perspective for all those taxpayers out there, if we had a government who respected the Constitution and we weren't constantly having to fight each other in the courts? Could you just imagine how efficient and effective we would be, I would say, at both levels of government?
But what would the lawyers do?
I always say, a few less dollars spent on lawyers and consultants is not a bad thing for taxpayers.
It's never a bad thing. Premier, I'll give you the last word on this one, and we'll go to our poll.
No, I recognize Cam's frustration. I sometimes feel the same way. I think we needed to ask the question of whether or not we should spend a lot of effort in this, or if we should be really just taking the role of asserting where we already have clear jurisdiction. And that's the balance that we're looking for. Do we get into a big conversation about constitutional reform, or do we just assert that we have the right to collect our own taxes, have our own pension, manage our own immigration system, have our own police service? There is a way for us to have either a holistic approach or just choose one or more of those other approaches. But I do understand why he's frustrated.
Yep, you bet. And hey, when we close tonight, just to foreshadow a bit, I'll give you some time, Premier, to touch on sort of how we conclude this and when we come to our discussions and how we're going to get back to Albertans on it and those kinds of things. Here's the straw poll on this subject. Should Alberta take a lead role in working with other provinces to pressure the federal government to amend the Canadian Constitution to empower and better protect provincial rights? Stephen, what are those numbers? You see,
it's not quite done yet.
We'll watch them finish. What do you show?
76-24.
All right, 76-24 in favor. So 3 out of 4. Okay, the next video, get your questions ready. Here it is. We're going to discuss immigration reform.
Our next topic is Alberta taking more control of the immigration system to counter Ottawa's open border policies, which are driving up the cost of living and are not aligned with the needs of Alberta's economy. In just over 100 years, Alberta's population has grown from a few 100,000 farmers, ranchers, and First Nations peoples to a province of over 5 million, with one of the most prosperous economies in the world. This great success story would not have been possible without new Albertans moving here from all over the world. That is why Alberta has always welcomed newcomers looking to contribute to our province's economic success and unique culture. And we always will. However, as all Canadians intuitively understand, the number of newcomers entering the country each year needs to be sustainable, and everyone wanting to come should be committed to upholding the Canadian values of hard work, love of freedom, and peaceful coexistence. Sadly, Justin Trudeau's Liberals upended Canada's immigration system for over a decade by instituting an open borders policy that permitted millions to enter Canada each year, often without any sort of proper vetting, job prospects, or needed employment skills. The results have been disastrous. Housing prices have skyrocketed. Unemployment keeps increasing as immigration outpaces job growth. And sadly, many of the divisions and disputes that plague other countries have begun making their way into ours. Further, Ottawa has ignored the request of Alberta to cut refugee claimants and student visas, and instead permit Alberta, like Quebec, to select a more sustainable and targeted number of economic migrants better able to contribute to our province's economy. What can Alberta do about the situation? Quite a bit, actually. You see, under the Constitution, immigration is a shared area of responsibility between the federal and provincial governments, which makes sense. Essentially, the federal government gets to decide who they let into Canada, but it's up to the provinces to provide the vast majority of the social programs that newcomers need. So obviously, we should have a say about who is coming here. If Alberta isn't satisfied with the number or economic qualifications of newcomers moving to our province, we may have the option to withhold provincial social programs to any non-citizen or non-permanent resident who does not have an Alberta-approved immigration status. This would likely encourage more sustainable numbers of immigration overall, while supporting the entry of newcomers that can contribute to our provincial economy. If Alberta went this direction, Ottawa could decide to fight Alberta on this issue in the courts, and there would be some additional costs in taking a more hands-on approach to immigration. However, much, if not all of that cost, could be offset in corresponding savings to our social programs. So, should Alberta take more control of the immigration system in this way, or continue with the status quo? And how can our province convince Ottawa to act more responsibly with their immigration policies in the future?
This, too, has been a tremendous topic of conversation as we have traveled around Alberta. And so glad you're with us tonight on our Alberta Next virtual town hall to chat about it as well. We have on our panel 3 first-generation Canadian families. They came to Canada for a better way of life. They've all done very well, and they have interesting views, to say the least, on how our immigration system has changed. Why don't we ask Dr. Aiken to kick us off tonight on this one before we go to some calls. Dr. Aiken?
Thank you, Bruce. My name is Dr. Aiken Osakwade. I'm a family doc from Didsbury. I work out of Didsbury, and I moved to rural Alberta about 10 years ago with my family from England. And I moved for a better life, for a job, for opportunities, and a safe place to raise my family. And it's been an amazing experience. And that is what the beauty of the Alberta dream: a place to raise a family, a place to get to work, and to get to keep what you work for. And I'm forever grateful to Alberta and for the opportunity to live and work in Alberta. And that is my experience when I moved here about 10 years ago. But things have changed. I found Albertans as being kind and generous people. But I think what's happening is, I think over the last, since 2020, we've had just massive Ottawa open border policy, which has led to an uncontrolled, unvetted, unregulated immigration system that is impacting healthcare, education, our health systems, our social services are all under stress. on this massive immigration. And I think the Albertans' generosity is being taken for granted by this Ottawa open border system. And we need Ottawa to get out of our immigration system. We need to restore control of our immigration system back to the provinces. What I suggest is that we need an immigration system that is sustainable, that is skill and employment based, and is led by the provinces. We have young people here that are crying for their first job opportunities, cannot find work. We need to continue to extend grace and opportunity to newcomers, but it should not come at the expense of fairness and support to established Albertans. I want to thank our awesome Premier for starting this youth leadership, youth employment initiative to ensure that our young people can get their first job and get their first step into that job opportunity that will start them on their career path towards greatness. We need a strong Alberta. To have a strong Alberta, we need a strong immigration system that we control. Alberta controls the number, the scale, and type of immigration. I believe in Alberta. I believe we can do it, but we need to make sure that we get the reins of control of our Alberta immigration system and make sure that we continue to work together with that awesome Premier to ensure that the promise of our province, which is that we should be free, we should be strong, and we should remain free. Thank you.
We should. Dr. Aiken, thank you. So well said. So much passion in what you said and how you said it. Let's go from one doctor to another on joining us virtually tonight. I think we've got Dr. Eldon Jaffer. I hope so, anyway. Doctor, you are still muted. If you're there, just click unmute, and then you should be able to join us. Can you hear us, and can you unmute? Dr. Jaffer or Dr. Jafar? Dr. Eldon? Hello? Hello? Darn it, that would have worked so well from one doctor to another. Sorry, we're going to have to pass on that one for now. Sorry, Vita, one more time. Who's next? All right, Xing Yao Zhu. Can you hear us on Alberta Next virtually? And if so, click unmute and go ahead with your question or comment.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jing Yao. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So I'm a student from an immigration family. I believe that the federal government's open border immigration policy has hurt our provinces in some ways. Families have been arriving really extremely fast, faster than schools and hospitals can keep up with. And I really want to say thank you to our private education system for helping to easier some of that pressure at a lower cost of the taxpayers and then the public schools. And yes, I believe that Alberta should have a bit more control over immigration so growth matches the services we all rely on.
All right.
That way every student could possibly have a great education and quality education they deserve.
Listen, thank you for the comments. Really appreciate that. And would say to the school system in general, public, private, independent, homeschool, all of them, they are strained. We've had 50,000, Premier, 50,000 new kids in the last 2 years.
Well, let me put it into context, because the Alberta's Calling campaign started just before I got into office. And part of the reason it started is because we needed to have people here as we were rebuilding our economy. But what we didn't know is that at just the same time as that campaign launched, that all of the restrictions were coming off of all of the different programs all at the same time. And it took, I think, a lot of people by surprise. So under normal circumstances, between 2009 and 2019, Canada was bringing in about 0.6% of the population of newcomers, so about less than 300,000 a year. In the last 2 years, it's been 2 million this year and 1.8 million last year. And so if you're wondering why, what changed, what happened, well, that's what happened. So under normal circumstances, we could probably absorb about 50,000 newcomers a year. That's about 1% of our population. We've been getting 150,000. And in addition to that, if you look at the number who are coming with families, it's resulted in a net increase in our school population of about 80,000 over the last 3 years. And you just can't snap your fingers and build schools. And so it's everybody's seeing the pressure, whether it's teachers in the classroom, whether it's people trying to find a family doc, whether it's people trying to buy a home, rent a home, everything is being pushed up. And so to get back to to that balance that we had so that we can have a number of newcomers that add to the economy, but also are able to benefit from everything Alberta has to offer, it needs to be brought into better balance. So when we talk about what does the number look like, what does Alberta taking more control over immigration looks like, it would mean having a priority on those newcomers who come because they're either an investor in the entrepreneurial class or they're in the kind of job that we need, whether it's a healthcare worker or whether it's a skilled tradesperson. Arriving in Alberta with a job is almost a certain path to success. And that's part of the reason why we think that Ottawa, sadly, flipped it on its head. And they prioritized other types of immigration streams, which actually add a lot of pressure to our system.
Boy, when you present the numbers like that, Premier, it is staggering. And let me tell you at home, if you haven't seen any of these town halls to this point, we have heard it loud and clear that you want us to do something about immigration. So we've got to figure out what that is, because Ottawa doesn't seem to be listening. Dr. Benny, another first-generation Canadian and Albertan, things are a little bit different today than they were when you arrived. Yes?
Yes, Bruce. So I come from traditional Chinese medicine family 33 years ago. So we settled in Calgary ever since. So we called Canada home ever since. We're super grateful on that. So back then, acupuncture was literally unknown or very much unheard of. But now, look at it as a regulated health profession under the Health Professions Act. Back then, I recall, the immigration system really is a partnership of friendship. The government has a lot of programs helping the newcomers to settle in, and the newcomers are learning skills or matches their skills so they can contribute to the community. If you look at today, I have so many friends that I know as newcomers couldn't find the proper jobs. And I have so many employer friends couldn't find proper employees. The system seems just totally mismatched. They're totally disconnected. Not 100%, but quite a bit. I do think the immigration system needs some sort of reform. So newcomers can contribute and province can prosper. So that's my view.
We have appreciated you sharing it with us too as we've traveled the province. Dr. Benny, thank you. Jeffrey Sakvindiak, I believe, if I've pronounced that correctly, is joining us virtually tonight. Jeff, if you're there, just click unmute and go ahead and share your question or your comments with us. Go ahead, Jeff.
Can you guys hear me?
You bet.
Perfect. Yes. I've lived in Alberta my whole life. And growing up, I've always noticed that there was always more jobs than people in this province. And now there's come a point where there's more people than jobs. And crime is spiraling out of control. I want to know if Alberta was to become a sovereign state within a united Canada, what would that look like?
Yeah, Premier?
Well, when I talk about Alberta sovereignty within a united Canada, I talk about us taking over more of the areas of jurisdiction that we've seen other larger provinces with bigger economies do. I mean, when we were a smaller province with less means, maybe we couldn't have taken on more authority over policing. Maybe we couldn't have taken on the more authority over courts and appointing our own judges. Maybe we couldn't have taken on more control over immigration, but I think now we can. And so by asserting ourselves in the areas of jurisdiction that other provinces have, it will allow for us, I think, to be able to, in the case of immigration, better match the number of people coming into the province with the jobs that are available. I think that's got to be number one. That's key. But we also would like to press the envelope on being able to police with our priorities and to prosecute with our priorities. And so that's part of why we're consulting on all of these broad range of topics to get the feedback about what is the priority for citizens of Alberta. But there are other provinces who have gone down this pathway, and it may be time for us to.
Okay, thanks for the question or the comment. Matthew from Airdrie is going to join us next. Matthew Morrissey from Airdrie. Go ahead and click unmute, Matthew, and ask your question or make your comment. You're still muted, Matthew, so just click unmute and go ahead, if you can hear me. Matthew Morrissey, my good friend from Airdrie, whom I've never met. Can you hear us, Matthew? Just click unmute. And if
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Okay. Well, you wouldn't be the first to ignore me for a while. But now,
sorry about that.
That's okay. Now that we've got you, go ahead.
I just wanted to know about kind of like the remittance. I know economic migrants come here and then they send the money back overseas. We pay equalization to the rest of Canada, and we're also doing it internationally as well. What can the province do to mitigate that?
Well, they would still have to pay provincial and federal taxes, and what people decide to do with their own personal income, I think, is not something that we would want to regulate. However, part of the reason why we would want to have more control over our immigration process, right from issuing the work permits to establishing a permanent resident status, is because then you'd be able to have people who come here decide if they wanted to be here temporarily and go back home, or decide if they wanted to come here and then pursue citizenship. And that's what we would be able to have a pathway for. Because right now, I think what we're seeing is that there are a lot of people who come here temporarily. If they don't get their work permits reaffirmed, sometimes they stay illegally. And we want to make sure that those who are staying here have the ability to have that pathway to become permanent citizens, bring their families here. And then when that occurs, then those dollars will stay here. So, but I think that the real issue is just that we've gotten that out of balance, that we need to have a better pathway so that people can be able to become full citizens.
Darian George from Calgary is with us tonight. Darian, just go ahead and click unmute, and you can share with the Premier and the Alberta Next panel what's on your mind on the immigration issue tonight. Are you there, Darian? I'll remind you, Darian, that you're muted, and I'm talking to you. It must seem strange. That guy on the panel is now talking to me directly, and here I am at home. Darian, you there?
Hey, Bruce.
How are you?
Hey, Bruce, can you hear me?
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, I'm great. I just wanted to thank Danielle Smith for hosting this, and you're going to be putting it to referendum, which the federal government does not do. They put hundreds of billions of dollars, and we never get a vote on it, so I just wanted to thank you for that. Now, my biggest issue is that I'm sorry, I lost my question because I had to leave. But we have a fertility crisis in the Western world, and immigration is sold to us as a way to fix the fertility crisis. And they say if we don't import other cultures by the masses, we won't have enough people to fill our jobs. So my question is, would we be able to fund young couples to have their own children here at home instead of the immigrants that come to this country?
Darian, thanks. And you know, Premier, you weren't sitting at our table for supper tonight, but we were discussing some of these issues. We weren't doling out money on your behalf, but we were. So Darian asked a pretty good question. Fertility rates are an issue in a lot of places.
Well, when you think about what young people experience, where they graduate, maybe they can't find a job right away, maybe they go to school, then they can't find a job, so they go on to more school and more school. We found that when we did our Jobs for Skills task force, kids weren't getting connected with apprenticeships until age 27. So part of what we think might be the issue is that if you end up racking up a bunch of debt in school, and then a house becomes unaffordable because the prices have gone up, and then it takes you a while to be able to find the love of your life. Now you're in your 30s and you're asking the question, can I even afford to have kids anymore? So that's one of the reasons why we've prioritized trying to get kids connected to jobs early so that they can perhaps have a different trajectory. The idea behind a child care program as well is to support parents so that you can have two working parents if they want to be able to have child care. And so that's another avenue that we've looked at. But to connect it to one of the panel discussion items, it could be that if we had control over our own tax system, that we could find novel ways through the tax code to be able to address some of these issues. And that would be one of the things that we would do. Right now, we have an agreement that we're going to treat all taxpayers the same, with the with the income determined by rules that established by the federal government. Maybe there's some ways that we'd be able to have different types of credits depending on different types of family factors. But those are the conversations that I think would be worthwhile to have if we take that first step of saying, if we had our own tax system, what are the kind of priorities we would want to put into it? The other thing I would say is that the old model, where the only way to get greater productivity and growth was through people, is changing a bit. With AI and with other types of technology, you have the ability to do more with AI assistance. And so it could be that we're able to still grow our economy with the number of people that we have. And then that will also lead to higher incomes and also lead to greater take-home pay. It may be that we don't need to grow at the same kind of pace that we have in the past. I don't know the answer to that. What I do know is the pace we're growing at right now is overwhelming all of our social programs.
Yeah.
We're seeing more demand on our social programs than new revenue coming in, and we have to reverse that so that we can make sure that everybody is supported.
I cannot wait to see the ideas that this panel comes up with. I'll say this just before I throw it over to Sumita to bookend this subject with us. You know, this is a topic that we need to discuss as a province. And so the Premier has said, we're going to talk about it. And there are some out there, critics, that would say, well, you know, how dare you? You're talking down to immigrants when you discuss this. I think the great majority of people realize that's not the issue at all. Immigrants built this country. We're all immigrants. But too many too fast has been what's been pointed out by what the federal government is doing. So it's a great discussion to have. And Sumita is the chair of the Premier's Council on Multiculturalism and a first-generation Canadian and proud Albertan. Give us your thoughts.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you for all those who have spent time coming on this week evening. We appreciate it. When my family came to Alberta, we came with hope. The Alberta gave us something real, a chance, a job, a home, a future. But today, just like you, I worry. I worry, well, our children have the same chance. Will we still be able to offer opportunity, not just promises, to the next wave of newcomers and to those already here? This is a moment to pause and ask some hard but necessary questions, not out of fear, but out of care for the future we'll share. For years, people came to Alberta because it was the one place still full of hope and still affordable. What happens when even this place becomes out of reach? Where do we go when Alberta too becomes unaffordable, just like Ontario and BC has? We need to find a balance. A future where immigrants aren't just job seekers, but also job creators, entrepreneurs, investors, small business owners, people who bring new ideas, new opportunities, and help build the economy for everyone. Because if the opportunities don't keep pace with the growing demand, we will all feel the pressure in housing, in jobs, and in social services. We came here to give our kids a better future, but what if that future is already out of reach? If your child asked you today, just like mine did, will I be able to live here when I grow up? What would you say? These are tough questions, but asking them is the first step towards finding real solutions, because Alberta's future isn't just about numbers or policies. It's about families and dreams. And we owe it to the generations before us and those yet to come and make sure their chance still exists.
Sumita, thank you.
You're welcome, Bruce.
Really appreciate what you've provided. Okay, here's the straw poll. Folks at home, you can vote yes or no. Should Alberta take more control of the immigration system to counter Ottawa's open border policies? Yes or no? Give you a minute, tally up the final results. It looks like a clear yes for sure, and the final numbers are 84% say yes and 16 say no. So there you go. Thanks for participating in that discussion. Let's have one more video, and not only will we talk about this video when we're finished, but if you didn't get through and you had a question about one of the other topics, we can take those too. But here we go on provincial tax collection.
Our next topic is the option of Alberta collecting all provincial personal income taxes, rather than having Ottawa do it for us. Today, when Albertans file and pay their personal income taxes, they do so through the Canada Revenue Agency, which then remits the provincial portion of those personal income taxes back to the provincial government. However, Alberta businesses file and pay their provincial corporate taxes directly to the provincial government. Quebec does it differently. They collect both personal and corporate income taxes directly from Quebecers, bypassing the CRA altogether. What if Alberta did the same? There would definitely be startup and ongoing administration costs, but it would also mean bringing good-paying jobs to Alberta instead of funding federal employees in other parts of the country. Under Canada's Constitution, levying and collecting taxes is an area of provincial jurisdiction, and Alberta could transition over the coming years to collecting our personal income taxes, as we do with corporate taxes now. So what are some of the benefits to Alberta collecting its own personal income taxes? 1. Better provincial tax policy. Currently, Alberta sets its own tax rates and credits, but definitions and treatments of income are still largely tied to federal rules, which limits our flexibility to implement more effective and competitive tax policy. We saw this recently when the federal government changed the rules on capital gains for doctors and other professionals, and Alberta was effectively forced to follow those same rules as it related to provincial personal income taxes. If Alberta were to collect its own taxes, we could tailor our entire tax framework to better reflect our economic realities and provincial policy goals, while declining federal changes to certain portions of tax policies that detrimentally affect provincial income tax policy. This could open the door to streamlining calculations and simplifying provincial income taxes for Alberta residents. 2. Jobs and economic opportunity at home. Collecting our own taxes would also mean establishing the infrastructure and staffing to support it, creating thousands of good, high-paying jobs right here in Alberta, instead of funding positions in Ottawa or other provinces. 3. More Alberta, less Ottawa. By moving away from the federal administration of the CRA and collecting provincial income taxes by ourselves, Alberta can exercise more direct control over a core aspect of self-government, thereby increasing our provincial independence from Ottawa. But there are also potential drawbacks to consider. 1. A long-term commitment. Establishing Alberta's own personal income tax collection agency would not happen overnight. Estimates suggest it could take up to 5 years to fully build out the necessary systems and staffing. This would be a major logistical undertaking that would require a sustained commitment from Albertans and their government. 2. Significant financial investment. The estimated cost to implement Alberta's own tax agency ranges from $750 million to $1.5 billion over several years. Once operational, the system could cost up to $750 million annually and require hiring as many as 5,000 new public employees. These are substantial expenses that must be weighed against the benefits. 3. Potential for added complexity. There are also practical implications for taxpayers and businesses. Albertans would need to file separate federal and provincial tax forms, although online filing would likely ease that burden. There may also be increased complexities for businesses and Albertans working in different provinces throughout the year. Now, tell us what you think about the idea of Alberta collecting its own personal income taxes.
What to do about taxes? Well, let's start on the line with Neil Ruddy, who is on to talk about tax systems. Neil, I'm not sure where you're from, but introduce yourself, unmute, tell us where you're calling in from, and what are your thoughts tonight? Go ahead, Neil. Oh, you hit unmute, Neil, and then you hit mute again. Try it one more time. Still muted, Neil. I'm going to be patient. Neil, that guy on the Alberta Next panel is talking to you. Neil. Okay. Neil, we're going to have to jump on. I'll come back to you. Miriam, let's see if you can join us tonight. Miriam, I've got you after Neil. So Miriam, if you can hear me, you unmute and ask us your question or make your comment. Miriam Manek. Unmuted and ready to go. Go ahead, Miriam.
Sure, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we sure can. You bet.
Okay, I'm a little bit concerned because I'm wondering if it's your intention to continue to create the Alberta pension plan regardless of having an agreement similar to what Quebec has, and regardless of the fact that people will be unable to move out of Alberta without losing their earned pension benefits, which they have paid into in good faith, and that they'll be able to draw on them. If the federal government does not provide an equitable or equal deal regarding the benefits that pensioners can draw, which was risk number 4 on your online survey, are you continuing with the formation of the APP regardless of the catastrophic economic repercussions that this could have for older Albertans like me?
Yeah, Miriam, we hear your concern, and I assure you most of that can be addressed. Premier, why don't you do it?
I would say that one of the things that's important to know is that you cannot opt out of the Canada Pension Plan without ensuring equal or better benefits. So that's part of the context that needs to be had. And as we mentioned before, as I know people think that there's an account of money that they've paid into that's got their name on it. It's not how it works. It's today's people who are contributing, who are paying for the pensioners who live here. So that's part of the reason why it's all or nothing. You've got to you have to either be in the Canadian pension plan or you've got to have your own Alberta pension plan. But it really is going to be very much up to Albertans. We think we've got a pretty good indication from the federal government, even though their calculation was less than we believe the legislation says. It still points to being about $140 billion, which we know, based on some of the work that's been done by some of the panelists here, that would be more than enough to not only provide equal or better benefits, but also potentially reduce the premiums or direct those premiums to an individualized account so that it does build up with a person's name on it, so that at the when they do end up dying, they can bequeath it to a family member. You can't do that right now. I mean, that's the surest indication that Canada Pension Plan doesn't have a account with your name on it, because there is no way of passing that on to an heir or family member. So we think that it gives us more flexibility, but again, it'll be up to Albertans. We passed legislation saying if any change was made, it would have to be affirmed in a referendum. So nothing has been decided. We're just doing a consultation right now to see if people want to put it to a vote.
All right. We do have a question about income tax or about taxes in general, I think, and it's from Reggie. Reggie Rosalajos is on the line. Reggie, can you hear me okay? And if so, unmute. You're muted, Reggie, I'm told, so you need to click unmute, and then you're good to go. So if you hear me, Reggie, you are ready to go. Still muted. So sorry, folks, but I'll just remind you at home, when I call on you, you have a mute and unmute button on your screen. You need to click it so that you're able to communicate with us. And so we're going to go to Adija instead, and hopefully you can unmute and share your thoughts with the Alberta Next panel. Go for it.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Thank you. I'm 15 years old. I'm from Edmonton. And my question to you guys is, if Alberta took over collecting personal income taxes, what specific mechanisms could ensure that we gain real fiscal autonomy without triggering federal pushback or, creating a costly bureaucracy that ends up undermining our economic growth over the long term?
Well, I'm impressed that at 15 years old, you know about taxes, first of all. That's fabulous. Trevor? You want to take that one, Dr. Tim?
Yeah, it's a really excellent question. So I should say that Alberta can unilaterally establish its own taxation collection agency. We do it already, as does Quebec, for business income taxation. This would simply be extending it to personal. Now, you're right to note, of course, the costs of setting that up, as was noted in the video, is not a trivial number. It needs to be considered as well. And so the benefit of doing this is that Alberta could have a little bit more flexibility, potentially design a tax system that has more economic outcome, investment, and growth-oriented goals in it. And then the cost would be the actual cost of funding that new agency, and that would have to be weighed against the potential benefits.
Great question. Great question, though. From 15-year-old, a lot of people, most paycheck go, wait a second, how come I've got to give away this much? And they start to be more aware of how taxes work. Okay, let's go back to Dean Meyer from Red Deer. Dean, if you're with us, just click unmute and ask your question or make your comment. Again, Dean in Red Deer, you're next. And Dean, I'm told you are muted as well. So click that and you'll be unmuted at the top of your screen and then you can share. And if not, I'm going to be forced to ask one of these panelists another question. And so here's what I'd like to do. Instead of something standard, I'd like to surprise one of you. Do I have all of your attention on the panel? Okay. Hey, Grant, what's your biggest takeaway from the tour that we've been on? What is there anything surprised you or stood out to you about this tour across Alberta?
Wow, that's an interesting question. From my perspective, I think that there's not a very good understanding of the complexities that that Premier Smith and her team deal with, and we're trying to have the voice of all of the people. So there is a separation style movement. There's a more of a social movement, but I think the biggest learning is that, from my perspective anyway, is that we do have a very clear understanding of people want to take responsibility for our own resources and our own financial management within the province.
Wonderful. Andrew Judson, I'd ask you the same question, and then I'm going to go back to a couple of calls. What stands out to you? This has been a fascinating tour across Alberta. We've heard from so many people.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. One of our fellow panel members isn't here tonight, but Michael Binion's spoken repeatedly about the province's need to demonstrate a capacity for governance, responsible self-government, the capacity to self-administer and execute the functions of government, for better or for worse, includes taxation, along with government, social spending, administering a pension, administering public safety and security, all of these things. And I think overwhelmingly, Albertans who participated in this panel, this opportunity, have voiced a commitment to that and a support for that. I'd further say, in gratitude to the Premier's office for organizing this event, I think that the Albertans who participated have gone away with the feeling they've had a chance to speak and be heard, and they haven't always liked the answer. We don't have unanimity, but I think that overall Albertans have appreciated this opportunity to come and speak and participate in some very important policy making strategy.
Yeah, you bet. It's been fun to hear what people have to say. Most people, when they disagree, aren't disagreeable. A few have been, but even when you disagree, it's been great to get other perspectives. Let's try Maria Burke. And Maria, if you can hear us, just unmute and make your comment to the panel or ask your question. You're on with Alberta Next virtually tonight. Maria, I'm told you're muted, and if that's the case, I need you to unmute, and then I would ask our team to remind everybody of this before you send them in this way. Still muted, Maria. Okay, how about Jerry? Can we go to Jerry Kovacs? And because Jerry knows how to run his computer, I just bet he's an expert. So Jerry, if you just click mute, you'll be unmuted and you can chat with us. And if not, I'm going to ask another panelist a tough question. All right, Jerry, go ahead.
Just like this, apparently.
You're good. You got it, Jerry.
Well, just so that you folks know, I am born and raised in Lethbridge, but I'm presently living in Ottawa, and I visit Alberta 3 or 4 times a year. As an Albertan living outside the province, I'm regularly criticized for standing up for the positions that the Alberta government has taken. So my question is, what is it that we can do as Albertans living outside the province to help other Canadians understand what it is Albertans are trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I will, Premier, ask you to decide whether you want to take it or throw it to another one of our elected representatives or both. What do you think?
Well, I would say that we're very encouraged by people who are talking about the Alberta story in all parts of the country and all parts of the world. What we've discovered is that really that's the only way for people to understand what our aspirations are. A few years ago, I think people were kind of ignoring us. They didn't understand why it is that we were so concerned about these issues. But when people like Jerry are able to point to, it's not just an ideological issue. It's a matter of prosperity. If we could just build pipelines and be able to develop our economy, it would result in tens of billions of dollars of additional GDP. Yeah. And that additional GDP gets taxed both federally and provincially. Yes, we benefit from royalties, but Ottawa benefits from being able to get the personal and corporate income taxes that come off of that. And so Albertans are very, very generous. The only times I think that Albertans get really unhappy with the way the country works is when we have politicians in Ottawa who say, no, we don't want you to create wealth, but we want you to keep on sending us the same amount of money so we can send it the same way. That's when we end up with tension in the country. A lot of things can get solved if you just let Alberta be Alberta. And I would hope that folks like Jerry is able to make that point when he's in Ottawa.
Yeah, you bet. And we all have relatives and friends across the country. I think we're all reminded to share our story with pride, as the Premier said. Okay, Orest Ilkin is with us virtually. Orest, if you're there, you are now unmuted and free to launch. Orest, go ahead.
Yes, I put in a number of comments, but I think the last comment really is that, Canada's strength has always been this creative tension between federal and provincial jurisdictions and powers. And really what I'd like to see is that, do we need to really be at each other's throats all the time? Or can we just work collaboratively? Restore the balance. Sorry, in my estimation, absolute power corrupts, and this creative tension is required to keep a balance and harmony in Canada.
Yeah.
I think that's a very wise comment. Yeah. And it's true. And I think that that's exactly what the founders had in mind. It's why Alberta and the provinces are not subservient orders of government. I've used this example before that when we sign agreements with Ottawa, we sign them on behalf of His Majesty and right of Alberta. And the Crown and the federal government signs on behalf of His Majesty and right of Canada. That we both get our jurisdictional authority from our constitutional separation of powers that stem back to the foundation of our country. And so I would say that creative tension is exactly why Canada is such a decentralized nation, one of the most in the world, and should operate that way as a decentralized nation. And it's the federal government who keeps on encroaching on areas that it shouldn't be. But I agree with Orest that the better situation is when we can find things that we jointly care about and do them together, which is what I'm encouraging the Prime Minister to do.
That's right.
To support us on bitumen pipeline with the Pathways project and repeal the bad laws so that we can work together to get our economy going again.
That's right.
Hey, Bruce, if I could just add to that. This creative tension does require good faith on both sides. And as Minister Schultz alluded to, of course, the opinion of the Supreme Court of Canada on the Impact Assessment Act was simply ignored by the federal government because it was, quotes, only an opinion. That's just wrong. And so there's got to be a change down in Ottawa. I think we've got the right attitude here in Alberta, but there's got to be an attitudinal change in Ottawa to make this creative dynamism actually work.
Okay. I'm going to read a question for Dr. Toom, and then I'm going to ask you a moderator question. So I'm going to give you two, okay? So this is from Barb from Grand Prairie, and her question is, how can Alberta protect itself from global agreements entered by the federal government? When there are some, I know we've spoke about them here, climate agreements, those kinds of things. What can we do there? And then my question for you is, my observation, it's been fascinating listening to you at these things and how much you know. What did you learn from traveling with us?
Right. So, well, to the first question, not being an international or constitutional lawyer, I'll have an asterisk next to what I say. Maybe The Honourable Bruce McDonald concur.
Everybody starts with, I'm not a lawyer.
The federal government certainly is responsible for ratifying and engaging in international treaties, but the existence of a treaty doesn't give the federal government special power to override provincial legislation in areas of provincial jurisdiction. It does need to work within federal jurisdiction, whether there's a treaty or not. That doesn't give it the right to overpower provinces.
Okay.
And so, often when we're having these agreements, and trade agreements are a great example of this, because often there does need to be a lot of cooperation between orders of government. There should be that engagement with provinces as the treaty is being negotiated.
And what have you learned from the Alberta Next panel and the 10-city tour, all of these folks, all of the great Albertans that have shared with us and in our virtual one tonight?
Yeah, great question. So I'm pretty comfortable in a spreadsheet, with the data, with the numbers. Yeah. And I think it was very important for me, and I learned a lot from all of the Albertans that I heard at the town halls about how policy impacts individual lives and communities in a very real way, that sometimes I don't have that perspective top of mind when I'm focused more on the math or the numbers or the data. And I think that broader perspective was critical for me, and I learned a lot.
Okay, that's fascinating. I wish we could go to everybody for that. We don't have time for it tonight, but we're going to hear from everybody again. And Premier, sorry, you want to?
Yeah, just on the issue, because I think it's an important one. We have some legislation already in Alberta that says that when trade agreements are passed, that we have to acknowledge and pass them in our own legislature. And the courts have recognized that that is the case, that the provincial government does have the ability and is supported in passing through in areas of its jurisdiction. I think what has happened in recent years is Ottawa signs an awful lot of federal agreements and MOUs and undertakings without consulting us at all, even when it is in our area of jurisdiction. I looked up, if you want to look up online to find out how many different agreements, multi-nation agreements have been registered with United Nations, it's 250,000. And so how many of those impact provincial jurisdiction and how many have our federal government signed on to? So what has happened in Quebec is they've broadened it. They've said it's not just trade agreements, it's all international undertakings that the federal government has done have no force and effect in Quebec unless the Quebec legislature passes legislation. And we're looking at maybe whether Alberta needs to do the same.
Okay. Jean, I would like to get to the virtual line one more time, at least. So, Jean, if you're there, go ahead and click on unmute. I've got Jean Wohler. Jean.
Hi.
Okay. Hi, Jean.
Hi. Thanks for taking my question. I'm really impressed with the work that the panel has undertaken. I guess my concern and my caution is, and my question is, does the province have the capacity to take on all of these initiatives? And I guess a subsequent question, if the answer is no, are you looking to referendum to help you prioritize those priorities?
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to ask Premier. Jean, thanks for that question. Premier, I'm going to ask you to have that in your, I think it fits into your closing remarks, so just save that one. I want to do a quick provincial poll, or sorry, a straw poll on this subject about taxes, and then I want to talk to a couple of you real quick before we go. Should Alberta collect all provincial personal income taxes other than having Ottawa do it for us? Yes or no? That's the question. Should we do it ourselves? Or should we still allow Ottawa? And it looks like what, Stephen, about 80-20 again? Oh. Okay. Well, it's been pretty consistent tonight. Stephen, I'm curious your perspective traveling with us. I mean, you've got a bit of a different take, obviously, and you talk to chiefs as you've come around. What has your thoughts been?
You know, it is great to be part of this panel and such an honor. And, of course, there's a little bit of criticism as to how this is laid out. But, you know, what what's kind of opened my eyes is our leadership of our Premier to address these issues. And that, you know, some of it can be utilized by some of the First Nations I know. And going forward, you know, it's just a lot of discussion to see where we're at. And, you know, I was happy to... When we talked a little bit about treaties, that it was acknowledged by the people of the town halls of each city that we've gone, that it was well received and positive. You know, that they know that the treaties were here and that, we're just trying to navigate through, some of the jurisdiction issues. But, what we're dealing with right now is imperative, and it's very important. The federal equalization has an impact on, the funding agreements that the nations receive under the Indian Act. So is it important that we continue to develop our resources and ask for that takeaway capacity? It is. Not only that, our communities benefit as well, so it's just trying to find a path forward and working together.
Well, it's been great. It's been great having you two. I never would have envisioned when we played hockey together almost 40 years ago that we'd be here. It's amazing. Premier, I'll ask you a couple of questions to close with, and I'm sure you have your closing thoughts prepared. But keep in mind, people want to know what comes of this. How do they get some results? So what is your takeaway? What are we hoping to accomplish, and when are we going to get to the good news of letting people know?
Well, one thing I was a little surprised at is that there was not a few more ideas that were put on the table for us to consider, because I can tell you one that I've had conversations with other panels about is, do we need to amend the Constitution to take over employment insurance? Employment insurance is federally regulated, but I can tell you it's sure one of those programs that is not It does not treat the West fairly, and certainly does not treat Alberta fairly. So what I would say is, if anyone has any other ideas like that we didn't get to on this panel or didn't come up in any of our discussions, we have the ability for you to go online with a survey. There's a comment section. Just add it to that so that we can go through and collate and come up with some other great ideas. We don't have all the answers. One of the reasons why we decided to do our consultation centered around these 6 issues is that these are issues that have been floating around in Alberta for almost as long as I've been paying attention to politics. I think it goes back to the late 90s or early 2000s. And a lot of politicians and those who get involved in political parties talk about these ideas a lot, but the general public doesn't necessarily know. Right. And so we wanted to see if the ideas that people who are really engaged in talking about these political issues matter to the general public. So that's why we wanted to do the consultation to see which ones we think we can move on, which ones we should abandon altogether, and which ones need to be put to a referendum. What I would say to the question that was asked by, I thought it was Jean, about do we have the capacity for this? And I would say maybe the reason why we find ourselves in the situation we do is that when we formed as a separate province, we didn't, because we were initially Rupert's Land, and then we became Northwest Territories. And then even though Frederick Haltain made a very robust and passionate argument about why Alberta, Saskatchewan should be the single province of Buffalo, he was defeated on that. And so Alberta became a separate jurisdiction. We didn't have resource control at that time, but we did finally by the 1930s. But we slowly but surely began to grow. So when we first started as a province, maybe we didn't have the capacity. When we went bankrupt in the 30s, maybe we didn't have the capacity. When we've had various times where we've had difficulties in our economy and a low population, maybe we didn't have the capacity. But where are we now? We're a 5 million person population. We have more people wanting to move here because we have a record of entrepreneurship and innovation and job growth, and people want to be part of that exciting culture. And so now we're at a point where our economy is actually larger than British Columbia's. British Columbia has more people, but we have a larger economy than them, and that says a heck of a lot about us. So 5 million people, 3rd largest economy in Canada. If we don't have the capacity now, well, when will we? Right. And so this is what we're asking. Quebec is 9 million people. Their economy is not that much bigger than ours. I think it's only about 100 billion bigger. It's not twice as big. And they have their own tax collection. They have their own pension. They have their own police. They have their own immigration. They have developed a way to have a separate conversation with the federal government about amending the Constitution that governs them. And so they have a tax point transfer system so that they can opt out of programs and get full compensation. So if they can do it, why can't we? That's what we're trying to bring people into discussing. Is it may have not been right timing in the past, but is the timing right now? And so we're glad that everybody took part in this conversation with us. We think it's has been a really important exercise in democracy. We have obviously heard from the whole spectrum who have given us their feedback, and it's important to have that robust exchange of ideas. There is still time to participate, though, with the final survey. We'll be collating the results. We'll be meeting together as a committee. This is the last one. So we did the 10 in person. This is our last online one. We will be meeting in person to deliberate as a panel about what our recommendations are. And I suspect what will happen is, as I mentioned, some of the ideas will have seen such overwhelming support for that we think we might be able to move on some of them right away. Some of them still a little bit uncertain, but they might end up going to a referendum. I don't want to prejudge what the panel might decide. I've got a pretty good idea based on some of the poll results that you shared this evening. I've got a pretty good idea of some of the ones that need a little bit more consultation and a direct vote of the people. But that's what we do in Alberta. We have a long history of doing direct democracy, and we have a long history of being able to support that kind of grassroots initiative. We want to make sure that people have their say on these important changes if we're going to be making some governance changes. But once again, thanks everyone for being with us tonight. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah. It's not always been easy to be in your chair moderating with some of the tension that's been in the crowd, but we appreciate you guiding us through all of this.
Well, thank you, and it's sure been a challenge for me too, but well said. Well said. I look forward to our deliberations, our contemplations, and what we bring to you at home once we've all had those conversations. And I just want to say before I go, you can't see them, but behind us and off to the side, there is an entire team of technical people that have put all of this together tonight, that have traveled with us, that have done security. Just made sure that everything flowed. We're so grateful to all of them, and to these panelists. I'll say, as the moderator, it's been a tremendous opportunity to get to know you. So thank you for all of your work, and to you at home, thanks for participating tonight. To those of you that joined us in the 10 cities, thank you. You'll be hearing more from the Alberta Next panel soon, and have a great night. We'll see you soon.